The boy stands at the beginning of the stairs in front of a large cube, which calls him by name and announces to him that the skill that is bestowed on him is called gacha. In Resurrected, the main capital of Rakind, a man rides through the city in a carriage, who tells his son that the skills given to him are really wonderful. The son thanks his father for the kind words. A guy named Crestbolhurst, the fifth son of the Count, is sitting in a carriage and remembers that his family's jaw almost fell off when he told them about his God's dream. The cross reflects that in their country, when they turn 15, an evaluation ritual is performed in which God gives this person his own skill. The young man watches the joyful father, who informs him that he can already see the church. He thinks that for the first time in his life, he sees his father so happy. The cross reflects that after his birth, his mother died. He believes that his life was worth his mother's life, so the whole family hates him, considering him a symbol of evil. He thinks that he is an ordinary sinner who could be isolated at any moment, but even so, he still lived well enough. Someone pulls him out of his thoughts, wishing him a good morning. The cross is slightly startled by surprise. A long-haired, beautiful girl in an amazing dress is standing right in front of him. The cross calls her Alice. She is the daughter of the Earl of Ryfield. Crest says that he heard from someone that she is not feeling very well today. Alice replies to the cross that on such an important day for her betrothed, she cannot help but be present. She asks him if she might have interrupted him, but the cross assures him that of course she didn't bother him at all. The cross thinks about the fact that he is still alive only because of such a useful, political means as his wedding. The young man believes that Alice is a wonderful girl. Looks good at first glance, but in fact she is a sadist. He remembers that she had been ridiculing him terribly since his childhood. Alice clarifies that isn't it useful to have such a good skill like his. The cross notices such a strong murderous intent and is sure that she is tired. He decides that there is a reason why she stopped mocking him because of the gacha skill. He realizes that the nagging can get worse if he starts using his gacha skill. The cross realizes that it shouldn't be scared forever. Smiling, the cross thanks Alice and says that they hope this skill will be useful to her. The girl, who is surprised by such words from him, blushes. Alice intends to leave, says that they will definitely see each other again. The cross is surprised that she is not angry at all, because this is extremely unusual on her part. Alice leaves, and the cross is called, saying that it is already time for his ceremony. The cross believes that these terrible days of his, which he always had to endure, will end today. The young man thinks that with his new skill, gacha, his new life begins. Someone announces that from now on, they will present the Bauhurst evaluation ceremony. The man asks the cross to put his hand on the stone monument that stands in front of him. The cross approaches the monument, which glows brightly, and touches it with his right hand. The stone monument highlights that his skill is called gacha. The crowd is surprised, saying that it is really a gacha. They discuss that there are rumors that this skill can accumulate skills indefinitely. The father of the cross asks him to show him the gacha immediately. The cross agrees and extends his hand to fulfill his father's request. He opens the screen. The cross thinks that it is very bright and thinks about how it will share the screen. The cross realizes that he is the only one who sees this screen. The cross is calling the crowd, which expects to see a demonstration of his skill. Chapter 1-2. The cross announces to a crowd of people that he now has a screen with the gacha skill in front of him and he can spin it. He is glad that his new life is finally about to begin. He thinks that he only needs to turn the gacha and presses it. He stands there and begins to realize with undisguised horror that his gacha skill does not start spinning, even after he pressed it. He looks at the screen and reads that he does not have enough points to scroll through the gacha because it takes 500 points. And he does not have them at all. The cross is unpleasantly shocked by this. He cannot understand what is happening now. The cross wonders what kind of glasses it says there, and why it doesn't spin. He thinks that in his dream he was able to twist it. He is interested in how to get these glasses necessary for spinning the gacha in general. The father enthusiastically asks the cross if he has received his skill, and asks him to show it to the whole crowd of people who are waiting for a demonstration of his skill. The young man hesitantly replies to his father that he seems to be unable to use his skill in any way right now. The father furiously clarifies what he just said. Two young guys are calling him. All his brothers come up to him on stage and ask him if he is trying to deceive them all now. The cross responds to his brothers that he really saw it in his god's dream. The brothers shout at him why he doesn't spin the gacha then. The cross fearfully explains to them that he does not have enough glasses to spin the gacha. They tell him, in that case, to go and earn these points, which he needs, The young man frantically searches the screen for information about glasses. He does not understand why they do not write anywhere how to earn them, and why they did not tell him about it in a dream. He starts to cry because of such pressure on him situations. Father says he brought shame on them all. The cross turns in tears towards the father, who says that it was not enough for him to kill his own mother, and now he is blackening the name of the Backhursts. The cross assures his father that this is not the case at all, but the father demands that he shut up. Alice watches the whole situation in shock. His father calls him a disgrace to the Backhurst family, assuring him that this time he will definitely not forgive him. Alice begins to smile maliciously when she hears the words of the head of the Backhurst family. His father shouts at him that he has been banished from the Backhurst house forever. The cross falls to its knees, realizing that it can't change anything at all. The knights pointed 2 spears at the neck of the cross so that he could not escape from them. The knights say that he is really unreasonable. They ask if he was seriously trying to outwit his brothers by coming up with such a big lie. They say that if he had only listened to them, he would be living somewhere in a prestigious house right now. The cross begs them to give him a sword, because if he goes completely unarmed, he will definitely be killed by some monster. The knight replies that they were ordered to treat him like a hazelnut, which he is. The cross says that the original reason for sending sinners to the lower world is the task of conquering the demons that dwell there. The cross claims to kill as many of their monsters as possible in order to recover. He says he wants to make the upper world a safe place where people could live for a long time and asks for a sword. The knight thinks about it and agrees. He gives him the sword and thanks him with the cross. The cross is teleported, and the knights say that, apparently, they will never see his face again. A teleporter is triggered in a creepy forest. The cross looks around, realizing that this is the lower world. The cross examines the territory of the forest and reflects on the fact that monsters live in the lower world, and people live in the upper world, and both worlds are connected by one magic circle through an insoluble gate. They are the only ones in the world. Chapter 1-3. The cross reflects that the transporting magic circles are used to send criminals to the lower world, and they are sent to random places. So it is impossible to return back. He wonders what he should do now. Animal eyes peek out from under a bush near him. Suddenly, someone attacks him from behind his back. The cross manages to dodge, and, after taking a closer look, realizes that the beast attacking him is Wolf. He says sadly that he had to show up so early. The cross realizes that the wolves are much bigger and fiercer than ordinary wolves, so they are not afraid to attack even armed people. Cross pulls out his sword and prepares to attack Wolf. He remembers that he was the best in his class at the Night Academy and that he even fought a monster once. The young man realizes that the monsters from the upper world are much weaker than the monsters that live in the lower world. He believes that most likely his swordsmanship will end here. Wolf attacks the cross. The young man first kicks Wolf in the face with his foot. Then, when Wolf closes the chapter, he attacks it with a sword. The cross sees that he cut his muzzle with a sword, but realizes that Wolf did not even flinch from this. Wolf tries to bite the cross. The young man realizes that in the lower world, fighting is the only instinct. The cross grabs his sword in his hands, and with a loud cry pierces the beast's head through. Cross pulls out his sword and Wolf falls, defeated by such an attack. The young man exhales with relief, realizing that he had to move much more than he expected. He looks at his bloody sword, deciding that it is also good and definitely worth this inconvenient request. The cross ponders what to do with the body of the murdered wolf, and decides that for now it will just drain his blood. He remembers hearing that monster meat is very tasty. Suddenly, he notices something. The inscription 100p appears above the body of the killed wolf. The cross is wondering what the R is. He thinks that when you kill a monster in the upper world, but decides that this does not happen. Suddenly, realization comes to him, and he opens his screen. He thinks that this can't be happening. The cross exclaims that his glasses are here. He sees that instead of the 0 he had before Wolf was killed, he now has 100 points. The young man realizes that points can be obtained by killing monsters. He says that this means that in fact, his failed skill is useless only in the upper world, where there are no monsters. Realizing this injustice, the cross gets angry and swears loudly. He shouts that if only someone had told him that this skill is difficult to use in the upper world, then he would have come to the lower world anyway, but it would have been much better to come to this world with special equipment and treatment. Cross to lie down on the bare ground, watching the clouds through the leaves of the trees. He says maybe it was all for the best. He remembers Alice, his brothers and his father, and decides for himself that it is too late, and he does not want to accept anything from these people. He thinks that he has gone through so many miserable events and humiliations to have what he has, and would be very angry if he didn't get the skills. He decides that he will make the gacha work and only need to find another monster. He stands and looks at his screen, thinking that he had previously studied survival, so he finally had hope. He smiles, deciding that he will survive in the lower world and not die. Meanwhile, in a beautiful, large mansion in the upper world, Alice lies in her luxurious room, hugging her pillow. Chapter 2-1. A drooping Cross is sitting in a dungeon near his bed when a girl asks him if he is really that stupid. Cross looks up at her, realizing that Alice is standing in front of him. She says she is surprised that he tried to raise his position with the help of God's dream. The young man looks at the girl angrily. Alice asks him if he will tell her anything. The Cross asks her if it is not wonderful that she will have to break off their engagement with him. Alice replies that she cannot say that she likes this attitude towards her. She claims that she is doing her best to save him from here. The Cross is surprised by this statement. He asks what she means by saying that to him. Alice replies that she means what she said. Alice says with a smile that he is her dog, toy, and servant. She declares that she can't just leave him like that. The Cross looks at her with tired eyes and asks what if that's the case. Then how is she going to help him? Alice takes off her shoes with one foot and puts her foot in front of his face. She orders him to lick to show her his devotion. She declares that then she will return their engagement, and when they get married, they will run away from this place instead. Alice tells him that they will need to go through a ceremony and promises that she will destroy the Reifold family especially for him. She stretches out her leg and tells him to act and prove his loyalty to her. The Cross moves closer and opens its mouth. At the last moment, he hits her on the leg. He shouts that she should disappear with her toy and dog, and he doesn't care about obedience. He declares that he is not her servant. The girl is outraged that if he is sent to the lower world, then he will definitely die there. The Cross replies that if she is finished, then let her deign to leave. The young man announces that he has already decided everything. The girl is angry and is about to leave. She turns around to tell him one last time that he'd better remember this and let him just try to come to her with tears after all this. Alice remembers that after that she got sick and had to return home to rest. Someone is asking Lady Alice who it is. She replies that everything should be in perfect order. Alice informs her maid, who collects her, that tomorrow she is going to meet with the Cross again and orders her to prepare her things. The maid says that she does not want to talk about this, but the Cross has already been sent to the lower world. The girl is surprised and then screams loudly. In the lower world, the Cross cuts down another monster. He looks at the body of the murdered wolf and says that this is his second murder. He wipes the sweat from his forehead with his hand and says it's getting sticky. He looks at the bodies of the many people he killed by the wolf and realizes that there is a large concentration of wolves in this place. He reflects that his gacha ability is a super rare ability that allows him to have an unlimited number of skills. The young man realizes that in order to scroll through the gacha, he needs to defeat monsters and collect points from them. He thinks that one wolf he kills gives him 100 points, and he needs 500 points to use his ability. So he will need to kill at least 5 wolves. Crest recalls that, to begin with, he thought to immediately scroll through the gacha as soon as the required number of points was accumulated. He understands that if you catch wolves alone, and without any problems, then he can easily collect a lot of points. The Cross decides to aim for 5,000 points so that he can spin some cool gacha. Crest thinks that he has heard that the ability to light body depends on the strength of the body itself. He believes that he looks like he is drifting above the ground and striving for his goal and hope. He looks at another wolf he has killed and says that 37 murders have already been committed. The conquest is complete. The young man claims that everything is going to ensure that he calmly collects the 5,000 points he wanted while the sun is still shining on his path. He opens his screen to see how many points he has already collected by killing wolves. He is surprised by what he has seen. Chapter 2-2. It says on the screen that he has 25 points. The Cross exclaims that it is not increasing at all. The Cross screams why he has so few glasses and where they all went. He starts to get angry, but tells himself to calm down. He thinks there's definitely some reason for this. He wonders what the problem of his hunting is and assumes that each creature has its own, different number of points. He looks attentively at the wolf he killed. He looks at the place where the glasses used to be shown and realizes that it looks like the interface is no longer showing glasses. He assumes that he hunted too much. He swears, saying that he should have looked at his score earlier. The Cross pulls out its bloody sword from the body of the slain beast. He sees that the inscription of the points he earned appears above him. The tired Cross says that someday in the light of the sun, he will earn 5,000 points. The Cross remembers that after all this, he changed his hunting place and killed goblins, and then hunted fanged rabbits. He decides that goblins are easy to kill, because they are very weak. The Cross thinks about the fanged rabbits, deciding that their attack is like a small wolf, but they are very nimble. so it is difficult to hit them with a sword. The young man realizes that since the day he was sent to the lower world, he has been doing nothing but fighting monsters. He says he imagines how quickly he would have died if it hadn't been for his skill. He opens the screen and sees that he has scored his 5,000 points, as he originally wanted. The cross is happy that it has finally scored the number of points it needs and decides to see what is there. He assumes that the 3 points of poo are treatment, assessment, cultivation. He believes that all these skills are very rare and require high levels. The cross reflects that everyone usually gets only one skill at the evaluation ceremony. However, he can get all 3 skills. He asks himself what he should do now. He thinks about scrolling here or hiding in some safe place and doing it there. The young man decides that he can't wait any longer and clicks to scroll through the gacha. Something falls from above and lands right next to him, which scares the cross. He looks at what has fallen and sees a treasure chest in front of him. It is written above the chest that he should touch it. He clarifies whether it is necessary to touch and presses. The chest opens its locks. Bright light pours out of it. Several balls fly out of the chest and float in the air. The cross is watching the balloons flying in the air. He starts counting them and realizes that there are 11 of them. He assumes that these are all skills. He says that it looks like there are different variations of balls and stretches out his hand to one, noticing that this ball is a copper shade. He touches the ball, and it begins to glow brightly. The cross looks at the ball and sees different variants of abilities in front of it. He clarifies if these are all abilities. The cross suggests that this is a change in abilities. He says he can't understand it just because of that. The young man thinks about how to continue and decides to open the silver ball from above. The ball opens up to him such abilities as swordsmanship, possession of a short blade, and the rest. He thinks there are more tempting skills here. He notices that he does not know how he will check whether swordsmanship works on one-handed or not. Next, he chooses a golden ball. The cross exclaims that it gives magical skills. He claims that with such magic, survival is a no-brainer. Chapter 2-3. The cross says it will finally move on to the rainbow ball. He worries, thinking that the skill with 3 points has not yet fallen out. The young man reaches out and touches the rainbow ball. The ball grants him the score skill. The cross rejoices, exclaiming that it is gorgeous, and now he will try it. He decides that he doesn't want to lose his skills anymore. The cross remembers that it was necessary to imagine the name of the skill in his head. Cross closes his eyes, trying to concentrate, and imagines in his head the names of the skill assessment in order to use it. The young man opens his eyes and sees in front of him the inscription, Data Update, which is extremely surprising. A lot of tags appear in the forest. The cross does not understand what it can be. The marks are everywhere, on trees, flowers, rocks, and even animals. The cross claims that it's cool, assuming that he can evaluate it all. He touches the fruit of the fruit, and the label starts to load. All the peach data appears in front of the cross. The cross reads the data carefully and realizes that as the level increases, the number of items that can be identified will increase. He is glad that at the first level, it is possible to determine the toxicity. The cross wants to open its data, and its mark on the arm starts to load. His panel appears in front of him, and he asks if this is his status. The young man reads that he has 9 available skills, and tears roll into his eyes. Suddenly, his stomach rumbles loudly, reminding him that he wants to eat. The cross says that he is so hungry that he even has tears flowing. It's already dark in the forest, and he uses his magic skill to create a small fire with his finger to light a bonfire. He understands that at the first level he can only do this. The cross eats the meat of a slain animal cooked by it. He exclaims that it is very tasty. In the forest, you can see the light from his campfire. The cross decides that it will survive the cold somehow. The young man is lying on the floor, covered with the fur of the beast. He notices that there is so much to do tomorrow and realizes that gacha glasses are needed to hunt monsters. He says he wants to improve the doctor's base and skill, if possible. The cross, thinking about all this, falls asleep. The cross dreams of Ellis calling him. She tells him that if it wasn't for her, then no one would have taken someone like him. She says he has to obey all her orders. She demands that he answer, but he does not turn to her. She screams, repeating his name over and over again. The cross wakes up with loud screams. He exhales, realizing that this is just a dream. He resents why he has such dreams when he has finally escaped from it. He lies back down and reflects that she was in the aristocrat's school uniform. He recalls that since that time, Ellis's true identity has been revealed. Chapter 3-1. Alice thinks she's beautiful. She remembers that one person told her that she was like a reborn angel. The girl tucks her hair behind her ear and decides that she doesn't like it. She thinks it's because she's 100 times more beautiful than some angel. The boy tells little Ellis that she better not mess with him. He explains that this is because he is a child of the devil. Ellis remembers that this is their first meeting with the cross. The boy turns around and walks away from Ellis. The girl stands silently and looks after him. Ellis believes that the cross was the first person who didn't pay any attention to her. The girl clenches her fist in anger and says that it's okay. She thinks that the Banished cross will still look at her. He decides that he will definitely be crazy about her. Ellis remembers that the next day she started going to see him. The girl tells the cross that they are riding today. The cross replies that they don't have a horse here. Ellis takes out the whip intended for the horse. She sits on top of him and shouts at him to be faster and start laughing like a horse. Ellis realizes that the cross accepted her and her true identity, so she unknowingly became attached to it. However, she realizes that there was another side. At the event, the brothers of the cross surrounded Ellis. They tell her that she is so noble. They claim that she visits him on purpose. Ellis asks the sons of the House of Banished who they mean. They reply that they are talking about the cross. At this time, the cross stands away from everyone. In a corner of the hall, alone, Ellis reflects that they don't even notice his charm and make themselves look bad. She thinks they're incompetent themselves. She wonders if there is a way to put these scoundrels in their place because she is offended. Ellis has a plan coming up. She whispers something in her father's ear, and he replies that they will do it right away. Ellis's father asks the guests of the event to turn their attention to them, informing them that his daughter wants to make an announcement. The girl says that she is Ellis Leaford. She is getting engaged to the Cross of Backrest. The Cross, his brothers, and all the other guests are shocked by this statement. The girl remembers that after that they started going to the aristocrat school. She was proud of him when rumors about his skills reached their faculty, but she couldn't see him often because they studied at different faculties. The girls watch the cross from the window and discuss that the cross from the Faculty of Knights is very cute, but it seems that she is already dating someone. They're wondering who he might be dating. The girls notice that the cross is waving at Ellis and begin to suspect that they may be dating. Ellis, with a sweet smile, announces that she and the cross are already engaged. The girls are surprised by such news. The girl wonders why then she told them about the engagement. The cross stands holding a gift box. Ellis looks at him with displeasure. She asks him what he has in the box. The cross replies that these are gifts. Ellis remembers that the cross then suddenly became popular among girls. She believes that for them, the love story of a beautiful lady and a handsome man is the best of entertainment, and they really like the cross, which behaves like a real duke. Little Ellis laughs, saying that she sees that he has become very popular. She winks and tells him not to forget that she is his fiancée. The cross agrees with her. Ellis realizes that in the beginning, she was just a little bit jealous. She remembers that every day she stopped thinking. Ellis tells the cross not to talk to the opposite sex except her. She claims that she specifically appointed him as her fiancé. The girl screams that he is worthless without her. Ellis recalls that the flame of her jealousy burned fiercely and it drove Cross away, because she ruined his reputation at school and he lost his confidence by shutting himself in. Ellis admits that she thought her goal was to keep him away from others, but in fact she devalued him and was obsessed with how pathetic he looked. Ellis clarifies what she just told her. The maid Ellis says that it seems he has received a very unusual skill called gacha, so he really is a worthy suitor for her. Ellis replies that she thinks that she already needs to prepare a speech for her speech. She reflects that if this goes on, she and the cross will be separated. She remembers that she was very worried about this on the day of the ritual. The girl rejoiced when the father of the cross announced that he had been banished from the Banished family to the lower world. She believes that the cross has cornered itself. Chapter 3-2. Ellis believes that after the disgrace that will tarnish the Banished family forever, their engagement will certainly be terminated, and when she gives the desperate cross a helping hand, his life will become hers. She thought it was supposed to happen. Ellis looks out the window, realizing that she was mistaken. The girl believes that if he had been a little obedient, it would not have happened that they would not meet again. She wonders why she is and begins to cry bitterly. Outside the door, the maid apologizes for disturbing her rest. Ellis screams at her not to dare open the door. The maid replies that she understood the order. Ellis asks what she needs, and the girl replies that the head of the family asks her to give something to her. She asks the maid if it was the father. The maid informs me that she has been asked to prepare for an audience with King Shihai. The cross shouts joyfully. He sees peaches and exclaims that in fact, Fruits grow in this place. He takes a bite of a peach, enjoying this sweet and juicy taste. He assures me that all his fatigue passed in a flash. The cross thinks that this almond tree is twice as large as usual and has begun to bear fruit in just 5 days. 5 days ago, the cross announced that 25 fish arrows were ready. He looks at the screen, claiming that he now has 11 gachai skills. He exclaims that he now has 2 rainbow skills. He looks at the skills and is glad that so many new ones have appeared. He notices that the score has gone down, but decides that the level will rise again. The young man reads that the rainbow skill, cultivation, allows you to reduce time and enhance any quality of the cultivated object. The cross picks up a bone and is offered to grow a fruiting mamona tree, notifying that it will take 5 days. The cross is surprised that a fruit-bearing tree can grow in 5 days. He says that rainbow skills are even more cheat than he imagined. He looks at the screen and says that in these 5 days he is focused on learning skills and finally gacha. He reports that he has defeated Skeleton and Fae. The cross turns the gacha and asks for new skills to come. He gets copper skills, silver skills, gold skills, and rainbow skills. The cross rejoices, exclaiming that it has received the long-awaited skill, Healing. He claims that with this skill he can make a potion. The young man reads that the rainbow skill, Healing, allows you to make a potion from medicinal herbs and ingredients. The cross realizes that the potion needs ingredients. He remembers that he searched for medicinal herbs for 5 days, but there are not enough of them in this place. The young man claims that this dispelled his anxiety about injuries and illnesses. He decides that after lunch he will go to look for a place where there are many medicinal herbs. The cross tries to injure the bull that attacked it, but it does not succeed. He looks at the part of his sword that has sunk into the ground and realizes with horror that it is broken. The fanged bull is preparing to attack him again. He looks at the hilt that remains of his sword and realizes that a bronze sword with a strength equal to 0 out of 200 is impossible to use. He swears, claiming that there is very little left. The bull is advancing on the young man. The cross decides that initially the strength of his sword was low, and apparently now there was a limit. He realizes that against such a monster, he has dropped to 0 at once. The cross goes through the options of how he can defeat the bull in this battle, but realizes that he cannot use magic at all yet, and fishing and cultivation are useless. The cross gets an idea. He turns directly to the bull, deciding that he will fight hand to hand with him and stands in a pose for the right blow. He makes a direct hit right at the head of the fanged bull. Chapter 3.3. The fanged bull turns over from such a powerful blow that struck the cross. The bull lies defeated by him, and the young man thinks that he is clearly not far from the first level of strength. He did not expect such a strong opponent to come out. An inscription begins to appear above the fanged bull that he received 200 points for his murder. The cross, after reading it, is surprised at the number of points that fell from this beast. The young man claims that usually, defeating animals, he did not get above 100 points. He assumes that the stronger his opponent is, the more points he gets later. The cross realizes that martial arts, even if they are at the first level, have simply amazing power. He wants to tell you what happened to his hands a few seconds after using this skill, but abruptly interrupts. He looks at his hand, with which he hit the fanged bull, and is horrified when he sees that it is all swollen and bleeding from it. The cross screams in fright, asking what's wrong with his hand. He starts crying from the unbearable pain and launches his skill. The young man reads that it is necessary to take the CIO herb and place it in water purified by magic, and says that he did this. He reads that this potion should be applied to the damaged area. The young man pours this purified water with CIO grass on his injured hand, which he made thanks to his healing skill, and screams in pain. The cross lies on the floor and looks at his hand, realizing that it hardly hurts. He thinks Rainbow's skills are incredible. The young man lifts the hilt of his broken sword. He decides that martial arts and pharmaceuticals are not high enough to be used. He says he needs to take care of his sword. Cross uses his skill called Blacksmith. He reads that he needs to put the hilt of his broken sword on the board, as well as the fang of a cow. He reads that the Juga Cow Fang sword is ready, and its attack power is 70. And the endurance value is 200. The young man picks it up, saying that it will be completed in the shortest possible time and has maximum durability. He comes to the conclusion that the sword is good, but in battle he learned that one weapon is not enough to win. The cross decides that he must find allies for himself. He thinks that in order to turn the gacha, he must continue to defeat new monsters. But if such a strong opponent appears in the future, it will be risky to enter the battle alone. He thinks that if he has friends, he can take turns watching while one of them goes to bed. He decides that tactics are also born in battle. Crest recalls that when he was still living in the upper world, someone ruthlessly kidnapped other people, and if there were several of them in the same place, they would unite with each other and use a spell. The cross stands, thinking, and decides that it will try to find some traces of a person. He believes that humanity is an incredibly sinful and savage race. He moves on, thinking that it is difficult to make new friends. He decides that generations are changing and everything is completely changing. So he thinks that at least one of the people will be able to help him. Thinking about his own, he continues on his way, when suddenly he notices something in his path. What he sees shocks him. He wonders if this is really a man dressed in armor in front of him right now. He decides that this is his chance, but does not understand at all how to do what he has planned. A man dressed in armor politely greets the cross. She confesses to him that she didn't believe him when he was ridiculed in the upper world. She clarifies whether everything was as she was told. The cross looks at her without taking his eyes off her. He thinks that no matter what land they are on, they are the same friends. He believes that she is his only friend. The girl says that everything is as expected. She admits that she had no doubt about it. The girl takes off her knight's helmet. The cross recognizes her, saying that he did not expect this at all. He thinks that meeting her is more interesting than in the knight's department to do imitation sword fighting, but with her every time it's a hard fight. She holds her cross in her hands, asking the girl in the armor that it turns out she trained with Ellis together. He claims that, in fact, the application of the sword to it, which he has studied, is quite effective. He tells the girl that he would be interested in watching her fight with Ellis. There is a heavy downpour in the upper world. In Resurrected Castle, Ellis shouts loudly and displeased, asking what they are doing here and why she called her to the castle. Ellis stands in front of a beautiful girl who is about her age and shouts at her to tell her why she called her to her place. Chapter 4:1. The girls stand and look into each other's eyes. Ellis's gaze is resolute and serious, while the second girl's is rather indifferent. A girl with a hairstyle in which two tails are gathered on the sides asks Ellis why she is now in Resurrected Castle. She decides to be the first to tell about her reason for staying here and says that the king invited her to an audience. She asks her if King Resurrected also invited her to the castle. Ellis is looking at her the whole time with a displeased look. Ellis reflects on the fact that give her Mina Massilian, an illegitimate child of one of the three clans with the title of Archduke in the kingdom of Shihai, the Massilian family, who received an extremely rare skill at the recruitment ritual. She thinks that Minu studies with the cross in the same course of knightly sciences, and can always find a common topic of conversation with him, enthusiastically discussing it with him. Ellis believes that Minu spends more time at the academy with the cross than she does. Ellis also realizes that Minu Massilian has bigger breasts than she does. She thinks that she is the girl she hates more than anyone else. Someone, noticing Ellis and Mina, who are standing next to each other, exclaims that it's them. Ellis recognizes the guys who approach them because these are the older brothers from the Banished family. The young men notice that Ellis and Mina have also been called to the king. Brother of the Cross tells Ellis that she is charming. Ellis replies that this is indisputable. The second brother says that Mina met a monster in the city and immediately killed it, calling it a notable achievement. He's asking if it's worth protecting the commoners. A brother with blonde hair and short haircut approaches Alice, saying that the incompetent cross is missing and asks her if he, such an incomparable young man, is suitable for the role of her future fiancé. Another son, the Banished family, turns to Min, claiming that an audience with the king is a mortal boredom and suggests that she run away to go somewhere to have fun together. The downpour in the kingdom does not stop. Both girls, in response to the proposals of the young guys, say that they are asking for forgiveness. Alice, with a sweet smile, claims that someone like him will not suit her as a substitute for the cross. The young man asks again, not believing the words she said. She asks him not to utter delusional maxims in the future that he is supposedly more magnificent than the cross. Minu calmly replies to the young man that her power is designed to protect all the people, so it doesn't matter to her whether a commoner or an aristocrat. She adds that, however, if he is in danger, it is possible that she will change her beliefs. Both girls wave goodbye to them, telling them to excuse them. The sons of the Banished house, angry and humiliated, remain alone in the corridor. There is a crowd of people in the hall where King Resurrected receives guests. The king sits on his throne in front of the people he has called for an audience and clears his throat before beginning his speech. The owner of Resurrected Castle, the king of the country Shihai Resurrected VII, addresses the gentlemen representatives of the three families of the archdukes and apologizes to them for having so unexpectedly summoned them all to the castle. The father of the cross asks the king what he is talking about, because representatives of the Banished family are always ready to rush to His Majesty instantly at the first call, and Alice is watching them from the sidelines all the time. Someone in the audience is raising the topic about that monster that suddenly appeared in the city the other day. Minu Massilian turns her attention to these words, realizing that it will be about the situation in which she took part. Minu's father Massilian reports that the representatives of the Massilian clan, have coped with this monster. He asks the king if he will have any comments to them about this. The king tells him that they did everything perfectly. King Recifal VII announces that he wants to tell them about the letter he received from the Pope. The head of the Knights squad goes up to the king, and someone from the crowd says that she is, as always, adorable. The girl opens the letter and begins to read the words written by the Pope about the recent appearance of a mysterious monster that scares the castle city. He writes that he was privy to the contents of the divine dream and sets it out below. The Pope writes that it is better for them to talk about more mundane things instead of divine speeches, and reports that lately there have been more and more days when a huge number of monsters raid cities. Representatives of the three families of the archdukes exclaim that their country is in trouble. They are in fear of the huge number of monsters that appear in their country. The head of the Knight Squad continues to read the letter in which the Pope writes that they should not worry, because the gods have already figured out how to resist the attacks of monsters, so they will grant them special skills for these purposes. The Pope writes that below are 3 people who will have these special skills. A girl starts with her first name. The head of the Knights Squad reads that the owner of the skill, Intercession of the Providence of the Holy Virgin, is Alice Rifled. The girl is shocked by this news, not believing that it is definitely her. Alice's father, the head of the Riefeld family, praises Alice, saying that she is doing well. The girl thanks her father. Alice rejoices, remembering that it is true that her skill was too powerful to affect the upper world. Alice thinks that suddenly it turns out that this is an extremely rare skill used against monsters. She believes that today, from this very day, heroic tales about her will begin. The head of the Knight Squad continues to read the letter. The girl reads a letter in which it is written by the Pope that Minu Massilian will have the skill Blow of the Brave. Minu, even after hearing this news, does not outwardly express any emotions. Alice grits her teeth in anger, thinking that it's that mine again. She humbles herself, realizing that she has the skill of logistical support, and if all the vile, dirty monsters are entrusted to her, then she will be satisfied with it. She believes that when you work in close proximity to commoners, a sharp increase in sympathy is inevitable. Alice gloatingly thinks that her life may end on the battlefield, where she will be brutally killed. The head of the Knights announces the third and last person who will receive a special skill. The brothers of the Backhurst family argue among themselves, because each of them believes that he will be the last one on the list who will receive a special skill. Chapter 4-2. The head of the Knight Squad announces that the third and final special skill is called Gacha. Alice, Mina, the brothers, the Backhurst family, and everyone else are shocked to hear this. The girl loudly announces that the owner of this special skill is the Cross of Backhurst. The head of the House of Backhurst realizes with horror what he has done. King Recifal claims that these 3 skills have repeatedly become a topic of discussion about whether these are special skills against monsters, given that they were endowed with representatives of all 3 ducal clans. The king informs that according to the assumption that belongs to the Pope, it seems that in the future there will be owners of special skills used against monsters. The man cheerfully says that therefore they have absolutely nothing to fear from monster attacks, because they will ensure the safety of their country of Requind. Alice listens nervously to the king's speech in silence. Alice notices that King Recifal is smiling. She realizes that, apparently, the king does not yet know where the Backhurst cross is now. Alice is angry, realizing that it turns out that she and Minu will have to cope with monsters together. The head of the House of Backhurst, father of the cross, is so nervous that he is sweating. Alice thinks that the Backhurst family has done a lot of things. The king asks what they were saying about the Backhurst family. He remembers that it was about their 5th son, the cross. She's wondering what's wrong with him and where he is now. The father of the cross, when it came to his 5th son, whom he had banished, twitched in fear. King Recifal clarifies that it turns out the Gacha skill is possessed by a cross from the Backhurst family. The father of the cross, nervous, hesitantly tries to lie about the health of the cross. He is interrupted by a man who suddenly addresses the king. King Recifal recognizes the man who addresses him, calling him Duke Riefeld. The Duke says that there is no way the Backhurst cross will be able to appear here. The king asks Duke Riefeld what he means by saying that. The man replies that he thinks it's best to hear about it firsthand from the head of the family. The father of the cross shakes with fear when he is asked to tell what happened. The head of the Backhurst family, stuttering with fear, reports that the cross has committed a misdemeanor. He says that the cross was exiled to the lower world. The king screams in horror, Asking again what Banished said, King Resurrected shouts that the cross, so to speak, has earned the special favor of the gods and asks what she has done. The head of the house of Banished tries to justify himself to the king, saying that the cross has committed a very serious offense. The king is interested in what kind of offense it should be for a 15-year-old child to be banished from his family to the lower world. The father of the cross is lost, not knowing what to say to the king. The girl comes forward, declaring that the cross has committed no wrongdoing. Minu says that during the evaluation ritual, Duke Banished decided that the cross was lying because he could not demonstrate his skill and exiled him to the lower world. The king, disappointed, asks him how such a stupid thing could have been done. The head of the Banished house is furious and shouts at Mina Massilian, calling her names. Duke Banished comes up close to Min and shouts at her, claiming that she got into someone else's conversation and also has the audacity to tell them tall tales. Alice's father clarifies that almost all the people present at this meeting were at the scene at that moment. He asks if a recently read letter from the Pope confirms that everything said by the cross was absolutely true. The head of the Resurrected family asks Duke Banished if the reason for everything was that he did not believe his own son. The Duke tries to justify himself by saying that nothing of the kind. Alice thinks that he got what he deserved. Alice's father addresses the king, saying that before the country finds itself in a critical situation, they, the Resurrected family, will go in search of the cross to relieve his majesty of anxiety. The king replies that this sounds encouraging. Duke Resurrected bows and asks King Resurrected to let him give some advice. King Resurrected asks what advice he wants to give him. He gives Duke Resurrected his permission and demands to speak. The head of the Resurrected family adjusts his glasses and offers King Resurrected to appoint the head of the Banished Crest family if they can bring him back to the upper world. Duke Banished, who unexpected this, begins to resent with a loud cry. Duke Banished shouts to Resurrected that they seem to be joking if they want to transfer the right of inheritance to the fifth son of the house of Banished, the cross. Duke Resurrected replies to him that this is why he said he wanted to consult his majesty first. The head of the Resurrected house says that it is necessary to make the cross the head of the Banished house, otherwise it will be difficult to return it. King Resurrected asks the Duke what he means by this. The Duke explains that the cross was unfairly called a liar, treated like a real criminal, exiled to the underworld, and his own family treated him so cruelly, so there is such a possibility that he will want to take revenge on his country. He adds that therefore, by inheriting the title to him, increasing his position relative to the ancient representatives of the Banished family who invented an unfair punishment for him, they will present the cross with the opportunity to end the war. The head of the house of Banished appeals to King Resurrected, begging for their forgiveness. The king asks Duke Banished if the purpose of his life is to protect his country or if he is mistaken in this. The king announces that since he has been offered to return the cross with the condition of transferring to him the title of head of the house, he intends to fulfill this condition. Duke Banished, hearing this, falls to his knees in despair. Alice, observing this situation, says that she understands everything. She believes that her father, Duke Resurrected, uses her relationship with the cross as an excuse to get his hands on the power of two ducal families at once. Alice realizes that if her father succeeds in this, he will become more influential than the king himself. She assumes that in the near future, the Resurrected family will even want to get the royal throne. The girl decides that this is a story about how she and the cross will build their wonderful relationship. Chapter 4-3. Alice thinks about it, getting upset. However, she decides that it doesn't matter what her father is up to, because thanks to this, she may be able to see the cross again. While the Banished family quarrels among themselves over the decision of King Resurrected, the girl thinks that if she wants to be with him, then she needs to apologize to him for everything that happened. Meanwhile, in the forest, in the lower world, the cross receives a golden skill called Endowing Magic of the first level. The young man assumes that this is a technique for endowing weapons and protective equipment with additional properties. The cross acquired copper skills, silver skills, gold, and rainbow skills. He decides that he will immediately test his new golden skill, Endowing with Magic. He uses his skill by saying it to himself. The cross reads that the bull's fang sword is potentially endowed with only one kind of ability. It weighs power or consumes magical power. The young man thinks that he is interested in both abilities, but he needs to choose only one. He exclaims enthusiastically that he will still take the chopping skill ability. He imagines how this skill might work and decides that, apparently, it's something cool. On the screen, he presses the consent button so that his bull fang sword is endowed with the chopping skill ability. He feels a familiar smell. The young man goes on and comes out of the gloomy forest and sees something beautiful. He stands on the seashore, watching the lapping of the waves. The cross believes that the sea in the lower world is exactly the same as in the upper world. He notices that the distance is shrouded in fog. The cross walks along the beach and reflects that the world is covered with fog. This is the generally accepted opinion of mankind, and no one knows what is on the other side of the fog. The cross realizes that many times they organized research and all failed because the ships did not return back, and gradually everyone stopped even thinking about getting to the other side of the fog. The cross continues to walk, when suddenly he notices something that surprises him very much. He sees in the distance that there is a pier there. The cross comes right up to the pier. He notices that there are no boats around the pier. The young man assumes that people who fished or here, earning a living, moved to other places or something happened that they could not return. The cross decides that it doesn't matter to him what the reason was. He uses his skill, the art of fishing, which he received earlier. The young man is sitting contentedly on the edge of the pier, trying to catch a fish. He says that there is only one meat and fruit all the time, and sometimes you want to eat seafood. The cross exclaims that it immediately took a bite and believes that this is something huge. A huge monster with the body of a man and the head of an animal comes out from under the water. The monster had a spear-like weapon in its hands. The cross is scared because he did not expect the monster to appear. He realizes that Sahajin is in front of him. Sahajin points his spear at the cross and attacks it with a loud howl. The cross manages to dodge at the last moment and attacks back, but the monster quickly moves to another place. The cross stands on the edge of the pier, and the monster in front of it is a couple of meters away. The cross realizes that he has blocked his entrance to the pier, and you can't get close on such a narrow bridge. The cross decides that this is how it will try its newly acquired skill. He uses the endowment with magic ability on his sword. The cross attacks its opponent with the skill, slashing skill. The young man cuts open the monster's torso, so that blood is pouring out of it. The young man immediately attacks again, piercing through the monster's body. The cross overcomes Sahajin. The young man is happy when he sees that he was given 200 points for it. He says that when the level rises, he will probably be able to kill monsters with one blow. He stands on the edge of the pier, looking at the water, and decides that with the second level of the art of fishing skill, it will be possible to catch something decent. More monsters are heading towards the pier. The cross exclaims that there is a dominance of Sahajins. The cross swears, saying that he thought he would finally get along with seafood. The cross reads that Sahajins do not contain poison and are suitable for food, but at a satisfactory level. The young man decides that although it says here that Sahajins are suitable for food, he has no desire to eat them. He remembers that he went fishing a little more, but he never caught a fish, only accumulated points. Chapter 5.1. The crowd is whispering among themselves. There is a sign on the ivy bear that he is a representative of the House of Backhurst. All those gathered look at the bear in surprise, which is sitting separately on a chair. The king turns to Duke Riefeld, saying that he entrusts them with the search for the cross. The head of the Riefeld house replies to him that he can rely on him. Someone is addressing the king. The current head of the Massilian family, Father Minyu, informs that they will also help in the search for the cross. King Risifal is surprised, clarifying that the Massilian family will also join the search. The man agrees. Duke Massilian points to Mina, saying that they will even involve the brave Mina in the search. The king and Duke Riefeld just stare at them, not answering anything. People are asking who will defend their country then. The king says that the Minyu skill, Blow of the Brave, is an invincible power, and in their absence, a large number of monsters will invade their country with an attack. Father Minyu replies that the cross in the lower world has been in a much more dangerous position all this time than all of them. The head of the House of Massilian assures that in such a situation they should not waste a single minute. He asks the king that isn't it obvious what should be their priority right now. The king scratches his beard and agrees with Duke Massilian. He says that there is some truth in his words. King Risifal addresses Min, asking her if she agrees with this. Minyu, with a sweet smile, replies to the king that she agrees and asks him to entrust it to her. The king, fascinated by Minyu's beauty, says he relies on her. He announces that everyone is free. Someone asks what they can do, and they will be allowed to join the search. The girl confidently says that she, Alice Riefeld, also received a special skill and assures that her body has gained incredible power. Alice informs him that she is also engaged to Cross and clarifies that there is no better candidate for his search. Minyu looks at Alice with a displeased look. The king, thinking about it, replies that indeed, he cannot argue with this. Alice thinks that in truth, she is already an ex-fiancé now. Minyu raises her hand and addresses the king, claiming that this is not the best idea. She stands in front of the king and tells him that the cross has always told her something. Minyu Massilian quotes the words of the cross that eddies. With her arrogant and rude behavior, morally cornered him. Alice is furious when she hears her words. Alice babbles what she's saying. Minu calmly says that if the cross unexpectedly collides with Alice, he will probably run away in fear, and in this case, it will be even more difficult to return it. Alice exclaims for her to watch what she says. Minu adds that moreover, in the worst case scenario, he can take his own life. Enraged, Alice covers Mina's mouth with her hand, demanding that she shut up already. Alice is trying to take Mina away right in front of the king. King Recifal turns to Alice, asking her if what Minu said is true. A new idea is emerging in Alice's head. Alice, nervous and stuttering, tries to justify herself. Minu thinks that what he said to her in a private conversation is, of course, a lie. But it is suspicious. Alice tells the king that it is a fact that she sometimes showed rudeness in dealing with the cross. Alice is lying that there is a reason for this abuse. She claims that although she was engaged to Cross, Minu was constantly flirting with him. The king, believing this, exclaims that how dare she, and Alice laughs maliciously. Minu strongly states that these accusations of Alice are not true. She claims that she has always communicated with him only as a friend. Minu looks at Alice, saying that since she thought it was like that, it would be enough to discuss it with her personally, and besides that, she constantly attacked Cross, taking out her anger on him. Alice looks back at her, clarifying that she has paid enough attention to her. She claims that she didn't even listen to her, so she had to talk to the cross. Minu claims that she did not say anything like that to her, but Alice denies this, assuring that she clearly told her about it. The king tries to stop their argument. The girls continue to argue among themselves about whether Alice told her about this or not. King Recifal is getting angry. The king shouts at the girls to stop arguing. The king says he doesn't care which one of them does it. He demands that they simply return the cross back to the upper world as quickly as possible. Minu asks Alice how she is going to bring the cross back. Alice looks at Mina, thinking that she is terribly intrusive. Alice replies that she will persuade him and tells him that her father has already prepared an excellent gift for him. Minu clarifies whether she means that the cross will be awarded the title of head of the Backhurst after its return. Alice says that her father had a great idea to ask the king to make the cross the head of the family. Minu sighs with displeasure and replies that it is indeed so. Chapter 5-2. Minu stands in front of Alice and claims that she knows nothing about the cross. She says that what the cross has always wanted is freedom. Alice shouts at Mina that she is so annoying. She says that when he becomes a duke, he will dispose of the house and money as he wants. Minu replies that the cross is not interested in this at all. Minu complacently says that, however, whatever she says next to her, apparently, it won't do any good. Alice gets angry and screams, asking her what she just said. Minu Sharp turns around and leaves, saying goodbye to her. Alice demands to wait for her, but Minu does not react to her words and leaves her. Alice was left perplexed and asks into the void what this freedom is. There is a cross in the lower world, upset by something. He watches the balloons floating in the air and notices that today is already the 30th of April. He explains that April is the deadline. So today is the last day of mastering the gacha skill. Crest says that he turned the gacha wheel 11 times a day and got more than one rainbow skill, which is really a lot. He realizes that rainbow skills have a level of 3. And besides, it is necessary to pull out 4 identical skills. The cross clenched his hands into a fist. He thinks that since he has come all this way and asks for cultivation and cultivation to fall to him. The cultivation and cultivation skill is displayed in the ball. The cross smiles, rejoicing at this. He exclaims that he now has all the rainbow skills of the maximum level. The cross passes into its cave in which he lived all this time that he was in the lower world. He says that, it turns out, he will break up with her today. The young man assures that he will not be bored at all. Crest recalls that yesterday, after scrolling through his gacha ability, he still got the silver construction skill. The cross exclaims that it will fulfill its cherished desire and build its own house. The cross announces that he has even chosen a place in the forest where his new house will be located. He collected all the necessary materials to build a house. He inspects the territory and plans that it will be a house on a small hill with a beautiful view. And nearby there will be a river where you can fish and convenient access to areas that have not yet been explored. He opens the screen, where there are a huge number of drawings of a house for construction and says it's time to start getting started. He examines the house plans provided to him. Crest says his building skill is at the first level, so the design and size of his house will be modest. He claims that he's going to live alone anyway, so it's not really important to him. He learns that the materials used in construction are delivered in advance, and it remains to choose one of them. He is also happy that the desired layout of the rooms of his house is chosen in advance in the same way. After a long election, he announces that he has decided which house he will have. He clicks on one of the blueprints of the house that was provided to him. As soon as the cross clicks on the house it has chosen, a small wooden house appears in front of it. The cross stared at the house in shock. He can't believe that he appeared so instantly right in front of him. The cross checks the walls and decides that they are strong enough. He believes that these walls will protect against the attack of simpler monsters. The young man decides to enter his new home. Inside the house there is a bed, 2 windows, a stove and curtains. The cross goes into the house, looking around. He thinks it's made pretty well inside, too. He notices curtains made of monster fur, which have medium strength and low sound insulation, and window glass made of coastal sand with low strength and medium sound insulation. He approaches the kitchen stove, claiming that he has always wanted one. The young man looks inside the oven, saying that if you use the cooking skill, the food will cook instantly, but it will taste slightly worse than the food that is cooked by hand. Chapter 5.3. Crest reflects that since there is nothing else to do besides research and earning points in the lower world, he is seriously interested in cooking. He remembers that outside of the underworld, he had never even tried cooking. The cross lies down on his new bed and is surprised. He exclaims that he now has a bed made of the wool of fanged sheep. He assumes that this bed is even warmer than the one he had in his parents' house. Lying on the bed, the cross turns around to look at the calendar that hangs on the wall opposite the bed and near the window. It says on the calendar that it's the 4th of April. Cross jumps out of bed and opens his screen. He believes that it all started with the choice of gacha. The cross decides that before the next month comes, he needs to check his stats again. He reads that his strength is 130, endurance is about 123, dexterity is 102, intelligence is about 24, and magical abilities are 155. Cross realizes that by this time he has already scored 50,000 points. He remembers that 40,000 out of 50 he has already used and played the gacha ability about 88 times. He notices another important detail. The young man says that he, who was expelled because of the loser's skill gacha, has a certain number of available skills. He looks at his skills and exclaims that there are 30 of them. It says on the screen that he has 30 available skills, including his gacha skill. He has rainbow, gold, silver, and copper skills. Crest asks himself how he suddenly lost his sense of reality. He says that's how he built a beautiful house. The young man admits that he can no longer imagine his life without his skills. The cross falls on the bed, suggesting that when there is no emotional connection with anyone, the living sense of the world begins to disappear little by little. He suddenly realizes that expert assessment and quackery are in the same category. He suggests, what if there are special skills for taming and nurturing monsters? The cross looks at the calendar, noticing that May will already begin tomorrow. He assumes that the new gacha will have such options. The young man digests on his left side and says what else. He asks if the circumstances can be so favorable for him. He starts to worry, saying that who knows, and maybe the next gacha will have some restrictions. He fears that in the worst case, the glasses he has not used will be lost. The cross decides that it would still be better if he spent all his points. He says that it is possible that a notification about this will come to him in May. The cross claims that, nevertheless, this bed is really too warm. He says that she seems to have been created in order to turn a person into a useless and lazy creature. In the upper world, at the residence of Duke Bahurst, the Bahurst family discusses the events that took place at the assessment ceremony and the recent audience with the king. The brother of the cross swears, claiming that the cross has already disgraced their family twice. Another son of the Backhurst family sarcastically asks him if it's okay that he says such a thing, because in this way he calls the next head of the Backhurst family a cross. He screams back that it doesn't scare him at all. He insists that he did not tease him, so there is absolutely no reason for the cross to take revenge on him. He says that he would rather take revenge on him because he mocked him the most. His younger brother replies that he was only following his orders. The guy asks him what he says he was doing. The man slams his fist on the table, ordering everyone to be silent. The head of the House of Backhurst shouts angrily, asking who will now go in search of the cross to the lower world. He argues that this is what needs to be solved in the first place. The brothers listen to their father and stop arguing with each other. The brothers begin to whisper among themselves. The younger brother says that he will give in to the older brother and go on a search, because if he gets to the lower world, then he is finished. None of the sons of the House of Backhurst wants to go on a search. Suddenly, a guy with long hair raises his hand and addresses the head of the Bahurst family, claiming that he will go in search of the cross to the lower world. His father is surprised, asking if this is true. The brother of the cross named Albert, who expressed his desire to go in search of the cross in the lower world, says that he has a secret plan. He claims that they will see that he will definitely bring the cross back. Chapter 6-1. Albert holds a round collar in his hands. He asks the guy standing next to him if this is a servant's collar. The guy replies that this is him. He explains that the one on whose neck he will hang will unconditionally obey absolutely all orders that he will be given. Brother of the cross carefully examines the collar and says that he understood everything. The guy warns Albert that this collar is being used against criminals, and the cross may find out that he used it against him. Albert asks him if he is trying to tell him what to do now. The elder brother of the cross looks angrily at the guy who brought him the servant's collar and asks if he should burn it. Albert stands in front of a huge, ominous gate. He explains that this is a gate connecting the upper world with the lower, but they can only be entered through this tunnel. There are 2 knights standing near the entrance, which do not allow people to pass just like that. The guy asks Albert to be careful. He says that the lower world is so overflowing with magical power that it not only blocks the ability to move, but also strengthens the body of demons in time for transformation. Albert replies that he'd better keep quiet. Albert says that he took 20 knights from the Banished family with him to search for the cross in the lower world. He thinks he doesn't know if there's going to be a goblin or a wolf, but in any case, he's just a kid. Albert believes that there are so many of them that it is almost impossible to find a cross. He reflects on the fact that his brothers are incompetent because they have such a great opportunity, but none of them wants to take advantage of it. Albert decides that he is going to use the cross in the servant's collar to gain full power in Banished. He shouts to his knights that it's time to move out. They go screaming through the gate to the lower world. The cross is sleeping peacefully in his bed. He suddenly opens his eyes, realizing that it is already morning. He looks at the calendar that hangs on the wall, where it says that today is the 5th of May. He exclaims that it is May. The cross opens its screen, wondering what is in the gacha. It is written on the screen that the call of Gachai has been confirmed and the May celebration has come. He reads that he has 10,000 points, and the April gacha is over. The young man starts clicking on the screen. The cross rejoices, saying that he has 10,000 points, which means that he can scroll through the gacha 22 times. He claims that if he scrolls it 11 times in a row, he will be able to get the rainbow ability. He decides that he should try it and presses the button to smoke the gacha. A chest opens and balls with abilities fly out of it. Cross notices that he has received the silver skill Domain Evolution Technique, as well as a rainbow skill called Summoner. The young man reads on the screen that the ability Demon Evolution Technique promotes the development of his demons, and the skill Summoner allows him to summon his demons to his chosen place. The cross clarifies that, it turns out, these skills are useless if he does not know how to control his demons. He reads on the screen that this skill cannot be used because he has no demons attached to it. The cross decides that he should not panic about this. He believes that he just needs to learn how to control demons in order to do this. He exclaims that the May Gacha has just begun and he is looking forward to the news. The young man received skills such as Demon Guide, Summoning, and Using Demons. The cross rejoices and exclaims that he has received all the skills from the set. He reads that the skill Using Demons allows you to control demons, in case he wins over them. The young man realizes that with this skill, he will already be able to control them. He remembers that he learned something at the academy about how to get demons to join him. The goblin attacking him falls from the impact of the cross. He trembles in fear before him, waiting for the cross to attack again. Attacking the cross, he wonders what kind of love attack it is. He thinks it's slow and painful. He hits the goblin and thinks that the only way to get the demon to join him is to attack him slowly and lovingly without killing him, and then tell him about how you want him to join you. Chapter 6-2. The cross looks at him with regret. However, he clenches his fist and hits the goblin once more. The goblin flies back from his blow. The cross begins to worry if he killed him. Above the goblins, 3 hearts appear in the air, which puzzle the cross. The young man asks what it is. He claims that he has never seen such a thing before. He wants to suggest something, but stops. The cross decides that it doesn't matter, but he needs to hurry. He uses his new skill, Demon Taming. The goblin suddenly rises. Goban became a follower of the cross. Goban sat down on the ground and asked if he was a gob. The cross exclaims that he has succeeded. The young man tells him that he thought he had killed him. He wonders if it wasn't him. Gabu only says his name. The cross sits down and exhales loudly. He admits that he is very tired. The young man decides that they will shake hands first. He holds out his hand for a handshake and Gabu holds out his own. Suddenly, Gabu slaps Cross's hand instead of shaking his hand. The cross explains to Gob that if a hand is extended to him, He must shake it in this way. He shouts that he told him that he should do it like this, and not hit it. Cross looks at his swollen hand from Gob's blows and thinks that he is clearly not very smart. The Cross asks him if he can remember it. The Cross pronounces the word rank to view Gabu's stats. He notices that his intelligence is equal to 1. The Cross realizes that it is really narrow-minded. The young man gets upset, saying that he tried so hard to tame him, and then it turns out to be this. He perceives someone calling him useless. His older brothers tell him that useless ones are not needed in this world, and that he should not forget that they can delete him at any moment. The young man looks at Goba, realizing that this guy is also useless. He approaches him, calling him by name. The Cross pats Goba on the head. He declares that they will study. Gabu responds by saying his name with a more cheerful intonation. The Cross notices that he always answers the same thing. The Cross decides that Gabu is not useless, and he will make a personal, excellent warrior out of him. He suggests to Gab that they try something. She uses the earth summoning skill, and Gabu finds himself in the center of a magic circle. Gabu reacts quickly, looking around. The Cross laughs, saying that he has such a good reaction. The Cross assures that with such speed, it would be possible to use it for surprise attacks. Gabu repeats his name in an exciting manner and waves his hands, trying to warn about something that is bothering him. The Cross asks him if he liked it. The Cross hears strange sounds from the forest. He tells Gab that he has heard something. Gabu continues to try to warn the Cross of the impending danger. There is a severed head lying on the ground, which belongs to a goblin. Albert swears, asking what's the matter. There are dead knights lying on the ground, and Albert shouts at them, asking why they were beaten by goblins. Albert grabs the guy from the surveillance squad by the scruff of the neck. He shouts at him that he seemed to be telling them to always use the observation skill. The guy frantically apologizes to him. He explains to Albert that due to the high concentration of magical energy, it is very difficult to detect not only the Cross, but even demons. And when it is used just like that, they simply waste energy. Albert beats the knight. He keeps hitting him and tells him not to make excuses, calling him useless. Albert thinks that he did not expect it to turn out so unpleasant for him. He realizes that the knights fought worse than usual this time. He asks the knight he beat about the number of people with serious injuries. The guy answers at first that there are 6, because he considers himself 2. But then he changes his mind and says that there are 5 of them. The knight tells Albert that absolutely all the knights were injured in this battle against the goblins, so they will need to return to the upper world. Albert replies that they are in a hurry and orders the knights to leave those who cannot move. He says that if they are still alive when he returns, then he will take them away. The knights are shocked by his order, but they obey him. Albert is thinking about how he can go back there if they just lost to the goblins. He believes that if he does not return the cross, then his position will be under threat. The knight shouts to Albert that he no longer wants to follow him. His friend tries to stop him, but he does not listen and asks him to let him go. Chapter 6-3. Albert, hearing his request to let him go, silently turns around and stabs him to death with his sword. The knight, seeing that he had killed their comrade, screamed in shock. Albert slings the bloody sword he used to kill the knight over his shoulder and asks them who they think is their leader. He warns them that they had better obey him. He looks at them with a threatening look, saying that if they do not obey his orders, then the same thing will happen to them as to their comrade. The knight informs Albert that they have found something that looks like human footprints. Albert sees a human footprint on the ground. He says the footprints were clearly made quite recently. The knight asks him if these footprints belong to the cross. Albert replies that he does not know what the footprints of the cross look like, but his size is about the same as on the footprints. The knight declares that then he will follow this path. The cross looks with interest, and the Gabu look with fear at someone who barks. They look at their new companion, the wolf. The cross exclaims, which means that the wolf has also joined them. The cross opens the screen with his stats and reads that the wolf has an intelligence of 20. He says he's smart. Gobu shouts his name with a questioning intonation. The cross turns to Gob and asks if he wants him to look at his name too. The cross says it will do it. A sign appears on the Gob asking for a name. Cress says that now that they're on the same team, it won't be convenient for him if they don't have names. He opens the on-screen keyboard and wants to give it a name. He tells the goblin that his name is Goblin from now on. The goblin begins to glow and transform. Goblina becomes a girl with long hair. She is wearing a skirt and a t-shirt. The Cross is surprised that it has evolved. Cross suspects that this is the effect of the demon evolution technique skill that he received. He decides to check if his statue has jumped. He hears the barking and turns his attention to the wolf. He remembers to give him a name, too. The Cross calls the Rufun wolf. The wolf also begins to evolve like a goblin. The Cross lifts the wolf in his arms, exclaiming that he is so cool. He says we have to do it again. The Cross looks at the goblin and the wolf and calls them by the name of Goblin and Rufun. The Cross announces that from now on they will all live in this world together, and they have become his irreplaceable companions. Cross hugs Goblin and Rufuna and says it's definitely nice to meet you now. In response, he hears only a bark from a wolf and a gob from a goblin. The Cross tells them it's already dark, so it's time for them to go home. Goblin feels something is wrong. She opens her eyes, and she and the wolf find themselves in front of the Cross, preparing for an attack. Rufuna and Goblin are angry, sensing danger. They prepare for an attack. The Cross asks them what suddenly happened to them when someone comes out of the forest. The Cross notices that there is something there. The Cross, seeing the man in front of him, is horrified. He's starting to understand. He realizes that this barely audible sound that was earlier turns out to be a human scream. He believes that the source of this scream was definitely Ent. He looks at the guy with a sword in front of him, thinking that this is Albert, the second son of the Bucharest family. Albert says with a sinister smile that he has found it. Chapter 7-1. In a huge estate owned by the Backhurst family, a boy lies in the yard next to an already dead little puppy. Someone tells him that he is just a cheeky owner of some animals. He orders him to get rid of the dog's corpse afterwards. The elder brothers of the Cross leave. Only Albert remains to tell him that he apparently does not know his place. He lifts the head of a crying, beaten Cross by the hair and claims that he is a murderer. Therefore, he cannot get anything. Albert tells his younger brother, the Cross, that he is the only one he has ever forgiven in his life, and promises him that he will live under his never-ending anger for the rest of his life. Albert and his two knights stand in front of the Cross and his new companions, Goblin and Wolf. The Cross, recognizing his older brother, feels terrible fear. He wonders why Albert, the second son of the ducal Bahurst family, is in the underworld. Albert exclaims joyfully that he has been looking for him for a very long time. The elder brother of the Cross begins to approach him, saying that he already thought that he had already died in the lower world. Albert claims that this day is the happiest day of his life. The Cross, which has remained standing in its place, rudely asks his older brother about why he came to him in the lower world. Albert is genuinely surprised at such audacity on the part of his younger brother. Albert asks Cross if he is not glad to see his older brother. He claims that the Cross must have been incredibly happy when he saw it. Albert explains to him that he came to the lower world in order to take him back to their home in the upper world. The Cross gaped in surprise when he heard exactly what his brother had said to him. His brother, the second son of the Bahurst family, apologizes to him for driving him from the upper world to the lower one. He assures him that it was just such a joke. The Cross sarcastically exclaims that it was very funny. He tells him that he almost died from his jokes. Albert replies that he is still alive and tells him not to behave so cynically. Albert watches his younger brother closely, reflecting that this is such an unexpected surprise for him. He thinks that he is beginning to understand exactly what kind of feelings the Cross is feeling towards him right now. The face of the Cross expresses the horror that he feels because he has met his elder, and his whole body is shaking uncontrollably with fear. Albert realizes that now his younger brother is clearly not angry at him, but just very scared. Albert recalls that he and the rest of his brothers inspired fear and despair in the Cross from the very moment of its birth. He admits that they did everything so that he would never be able to fight back against any of them. The young man decides that although the Cross has a very rare skill, it does not matter, because if he obeys it implicitly, then everything will be fine. He calls his knights, whom he took with him in search of the Cross. He turns to them and looks at them with an intimidating gaze. He threatens them that if even one of them is afraid of this demon of the Cross, he will kill them. The knights, frightened by him, hastily reply that they understood everything. Albert approaches the Cross, asking him if he has any new pets again. Rufuna, the wolf of the Cross, starts barking very loudly at Albert coming up to them. The brother of the Cross asks him why he needs them, because they too will soon die again. The Cross suddenly declares that he did not kill him. Albert disagrees with his words, assuring him that he was the one who killed that puppy. He tells the Cross that that dog died because he was too weak to protect him. The Cross begins to get very angry and wants to answer his brother, because he does not agree with him, but the fear that he feels in front of Albert does not allow him to do this. Albert claims that he is irresponsible, therefore he will not be able to take care of the demons and suggests that they should already return to their home. The Cross shouts loudly, answering him that he will not return home to the Backhurst estate. Albert, who was about to leave, turns towards his younger brother at his shout. The Cross tells him that it has already decided that he will live here in the lower world. He declares that he wants Albert to leave and leave him alone. Albert calmly replies that this is how it turns out. The Cross stands and looks at his older brother with a look of complete determination in his pleasant decision. Albert sternly tells the Cross that he doesn't seem to get it. The determination in the eyes of the Cross disappears, replaced by a terrible fear of the elder brother again. Albert shouts at him, asking what he's even saying right now. He calls him names and claims that the Cross should behave more respectfully towards him. The Cross feels a growing panic. His heartbeat increases at times. His chest seems to contract, and his head begins to throb with pain. His legs are shaking violently, and he begins to suffocate from lack of air. Albert asks him what this demon is doing here, shouting that he is already tired of him. He demands the Cross so that he tells his wolf to shut up. The Cross doesn't answer anything. It just stands there and tries to keep breathing. Albert declares that otherwise he will shut him up by cutting his throat. The Cross begins to apologize to Albert, but it does so with great difficulty, because it cannot breathe. Albert smiles when he realizes that the trauma switch is on. He thinks that this is his secret, which he told their father about. Chapter 7-2. Albert reflects that the brain of the Cross is so stressed that it can no longer think consistently. The Cross cannot control its own thoughts. It thinks about various things that do not allow it to think sensibly in this situation. Rufuna's wolf barks loudly at two Albert knights who are trying to get closer to the Cross. She growls threateningly at Albert's knights, ready to immediately attack them in order to prevent them from approaching the Cross, because he is her master. Both knights think about the fact that this demon is very scary. However, they recall Albert's words that if they get scared of a wolf, he will immediately kill them. The Cross suddenly shouts loudly at Goblin and Rufuna to stop immediately. Goblin and Rufuna turn at the cry of the Cross. He continues to shake with fright, which he now feels because of his brother Albert. He asks them to stop, saying that if they don't listen to his older brother, then he will beat him up again. Albert starts laughing very loudly and for a long time. He exclaims that the Cross is telling them the absolute truth. He claims that he just has to obey him implicitly in everything. Albert comes right up to him and shouts loudly at him, saying that it's all because he's incompetent and not worthy of his life. The Cross agrees with his brother's words and apologizes to him. He continues to yell at him, saying that if he ever gets naughty, he will beat him up again. The Cross cannot look at Albert because of fear, so it lets go of its gaze to the floor. He says it's his fault and he's very sorry. Albert gloats, realizing that now the Cross has closed in on itself and has become just perfect. He thinks that he didn't even have to use the servant's collar to subdue him. He thinks that from the very beginning, he was wearing a collar that could not be removed. He orders the knights to take him away. The knights put shackles on the arms of the Cross. They begin to lead him away. Goblin and Rufuna look at him with regret in their eyes. Goblin watches as the knight takes him away and wants to approach him. The knight hits her, telling her not to get so close to him. The knight hits her so hard that she flies back. Goblin lands on his feet and starts to get angry. She wants to attack the knight that hit her back. Her eyes widen in surprise. She sees that the Cross is leaving them, crying. The Cross apologizes to them inwardly. He reflects that he said that from now on they would be friends and thought that he would become a great warrior. He thinks that he is so sorry that he is so useless. Goblina gets up and runs up to him. She's trying to tell him something, because she's come up with something. The Goblin stands right in front of him, preventing him from going any further. The Cross looks at her with tears in his eyes. He sees her excited face and asks what she is doing. The Goblin suddenly runs away from him. She's hiding somewhere in the bushes. Albert says she got rid of him so easily. He maliciously claims that the friendship of the Cross and the Goblins ended so quickly. The Cross, upset, thinks that, really, his last memories of friends will be like this. He wonders if he will be able to see them again, if he will be able to gain new skills. He wonders if this is his fate. Rufuna suddenly grabs the Cross by his clothes from behind, preventing him from leaving them. The three knights surrounded Cresta and Rufuna, pointing their swords at them. The Cross tells Rufuna to get off him. He explains to her that if she continues to behave in this way, then she will also be beaten. Albert is clearly unhappy with the events taking place. The Cross tells her to run away from here to another place as soon as possible. He wants to tell what his brother did when he was slow, but Albert interrupts him, saying that it is simply unbearable. Albert orders his younger brother to kill Rufuna. Cross's eyes widen in surprise and fright. He did not expect his brother to tell him to do this, and clearly does not want to do this to his new friend. The Cross begins to cry, realizing what it will have to do. Albert tells him that if he does this, he will immediately admit that he is not incompetent. His brother tells him to hurry up. He assures me that if he doesn't hurry up, he will kill this wolf for him, and he will remain just as useless. The Cross reflects that he cannot kill his friend, the wolf Rufuna. He realizes that if he does not do what his older brother Albert ordered him to do, he will beat him up again. Chapter 7-3. The Cross hears some loud and strange sounds somewhere in the forest and, starting to realize what it might be, is amazed. The knight asks what it is, and his companion assumes that it is the goblin who recently escaped from them. Albert looks around, starting to get nervous. Rufuna continues to bark loudly. Albert hits Cross so hard that he falls to the floor. Rufuna stands anxiously beside him. Albert shouts to the Cross that he is useless and asks if he called them here. Albert demands that the Cross immediately drive them away from them. The Cross is lying on the ground, and his whole cheek is swollen from the blow that his older brother inflicted on him. He thinks about the fact that he knew that someday Albert would still hit him. There is a void in front of the Cross, and he does not understand what is happening to him. Albert continues to shout loudly at Crest. He is angry and angry, but Crest realizes that he does not hear what he is saying at all. He reflects on how he feels now that his mind has finally cleared up. The Cross realizes that he also feels the warmth of Rufuna not far from him, and clearly hears a voice that clearly belongs to the goblin. He remembers that he had heard her tone like that before. He remembers the moment when she was talking, waving her arms, and he then decided that she really liked something. He believes that this is exactly the moment when he heard her tone like that, and then she spoke like that because she was very passionate about something. Crest remembers how Goblina moved when he was led away by Albert's knights, and how he said that she had very good reaction and speed. Realizing something very important, he abruptly opens his eyes and wants to call her, but he does not succeed. The Cross rises and, sitting on his knees, shouts Goblina's name to the whole forest so that she can definitely hear it. Goblin, being somewhere in the forest, hears the Cross calling her. The young man gets to his feet. Various thoughts are spinning in the head of the Cross. He thinks about his friends, that he is scared and will be killed, that he does not want to go home and he will be able to resist him. He decides that he needs to use his skills and he calls someone. Using his summoning skill, which allows him to teleport his demons to himself, he teleports the goblin. She suddenly finds herself near them and immediately attacks Albert. Albert, who did not even notice how the goblin appeared near them, screams loudly in surprise and fear. The enraged goblin punches Albert hard right in his face. Albert is hit by goblins and flies back, colliding with a tree. Albert thinks about what happened now, because some kind of monster just appeared in front of him literally out of nowhere. Goblin joyfully runs straight to the Cross, saying something to him. The Cross is calling her, and Rufuna is standing next to him and barking. The Cross looks admiringly at Goblina and asks her if she planned this from the very beginning. He gently pats her on the head and praises her, assuring her that she is very smart. Albert shouts to the already departing Cross, asking where he is going to go. He demands that the Cross look him in the face. His older brother claims that he will fight and says that the Cross is not worthy to be a member of the family, assuring him that he is nobody. Cross turns to his older brother and begins to transform his shackles, which Albert's knights put on him, into weapons. Albert watches this with undisguised shock on his face, because he did not know that his younger brother could do this. Cross makes a sword for himself out of ordinary shackles and claims that he has already said earlier that Albert has never been and will never be his brother. Albert is nervous, realizing that Cross has just made himself a sword out of ordinary handcuffs. The Cross points its sword at Albert Bauhurst and confidently declares that he is only his enemy. Chapter 8-1. Cross continues to hold his sword pointed towards his older brother Albert. He looks at Albert with a confident, determined look, in which there is no longer a drop of fright, as it was before. Very angry, Albert grabs the end of the sword of the Cross with his bare hand and says that he understood everything. The sword begins to melt right in Albert's hand. Albert gets to his feet and claims that this time he will finally imprint in his head the consequences that may arise from the fact that he does not obey his older brother. He orders his knights to kill this monster right now. The knights stand confused, because they understand that they are terribly afraid of this demon. Albert shouts at them why they keep standing still and don't follow the order he gave them. Albert Bauhurst angrily asks them if they are still knights of the House of Banished. He tells them to follow absolutely all his orders, even if they require them to kill someone. The knight, shaking with fear, picks up his sword. Two knights are extremely scared, but they attack Goblin and Rufuna. Goblin and Rufun easily defeated all 4 knights who attacked them. Albert realizes with horror that all his knights have been defeated by them. Cross smugly asks his brother if he thought he would be confused if they both attacked them. Cross tells his older brother that his subordinates were alarmed even by the voice of Rufuna and goblins, and the scream he heard earlier was probably caused by a demon attack. The Cross claims that he, Rufuna, and Goblin are superior to Albert and all his knights in terms of strength. An angry Albert tells his younger brother that he shouldn't be so cocky. Albert uses his fire skill and creates 2 huge, fiery, magic balls to attack his younger brother with them. He laughs, assuring them that they are all finished. Albert says that his fire magic skill has already reached the 5th level. He claims that his magic is the best in this world. He says he definitely can't lose with her. Albert shouts at the Cross to get fire and attacks it with his magical fireball. The Cross stands calmly, absolutely not moving, not trying to dodge, while Albert's fireball flies straight at him. Cross uses his earth magic skill, and a thick wall of earth appears in front of him, slightly larger than his height, which protects him from the fireball. Albert opened his mouth wide in surprise, because he clearly did not expect this from the Cross. He wonders how many more skills he has that he owns. Albert decides that he just needs to calm down now. He believes that no matter how many skills the Cross possesses, there is nothing he can do to defeat its fire magic. He prepares to attack it with his fire magic once more and tells the Cross that it is just a wall that is made of earth. Albert assures her that he will easily smash her with his continuous fiery blows. He begins attacking it with an endless number of fire attacks, trying to destroy the earthen wall that the Cross has erected for its protection. Albert was already exhausted from so many fire attacks, but the wall of the Cross did not collapse, although it was clearly damaged by fire. He curses, asking why this wall of earth doesn't break from his fireballs. Albert asks the Cross if his level of earth magic is already above 5. The Cross replies that this is not the case at all. He confesses to his brother that his earth magic has only the 3rd level. Albert does not believe that he has the 3rd level of earth magic. He asks him how this can even be possible. Albert suggests that this is another advantage that his divine gacha skill gives him. The Cross clarifies that Albert called gacha a divine skill. He asks him if this is the real reason why he came to the lower world for him. Albert is lost by his question, not knowing what to answer it. Albert admits that it is so. He explains that his gacha skill was given to him by God himself in order for him to save the upper world from the attack of demons. He says that lately various demons have often begun to appear in the upper world, and they say that this is an omen before bad future events. Albert kneels and bows in front of the Cross, but they are separated by a wall of earth. He begs him to come home with him so that they can save the upper world. The Cross removes its wall and watches the brothers please. Albert is angry because he thinks that worshipping this useless creature is the most humiliating thing he has ever done in his life. The Cross begins to approach him, and Albert decides that he needs to be patient for a while. He thinks that he can only wait for the right moment to put on him a servant collar that will completely subdue him. The Cross asks Albert to look at him and calls him his brother. Albert looks up at the Cross in shock and waits for him to say something to him. Suddenly, the Cross pierces Albert's shoulder with its sword. His brother starts screaming in pain. The Cross tells him that he is now in the lower world only because they, his family, banished him here. The Cross continues to press on the sword that pierced Albert, making the wound even deeper. The Cross declares that it doesn't care what happens to it. Albert screams loudly that he is in pain, but Cross does not hurry to pull his sword from his shoulder. Albert wonders if the Cross is serious about stabbing him. He realizes with horror that he can kill him now. Chapter 8-2. Cross pulls his sword out of Albert's shoulder, and he holds his hand to his wound to stop the blood. He asks Albert what kind of look he has now. The Cross asks him if he really thinks that after this he will believe him. Albert says that their father is very sorry that he banished him to the underworld. Albert claims that his father said that he would give him the duchy, so that all the power and possessions of the Barhurst family would be in his hands alone. The Cross pierces Albert with its sword again, but this time in the leg, just below the knee. The Cross replies that he does not need their duchy. The Cross thinks about what it is doing. He thinks that if Albert's leg is injured, he will never be able to get back to his home. The Cross, with a crazy smile, thinks about what else he can do with it. Albert begs him to stop. He's begging for help, but there's no one around. The Cross decides that it would be better to kill his brother Albert right here and now. Suddenly, someone pulls on his clothes from behind, thereby stopping him. Goblina is standing behind him, pulling his jacket and saying something to him. The Cross is starting to come to its senses. He uses his skill, which belongs to the water magic called Lord of Karma, and douses Albert with water from head to toe. Albert does not understand what the cross did to him and assumes that it was some kind of poison. The cross turns around and leaves, telling him finally that he is lost. He orders him to return home to the upper world and report his loss to them. The cross tells his older brother not to contact him anymore. He promises that next time he will definitely not spare him. The cross believes that if he were to kill him, that he would be no different from him. He decides that he is no longer a Bohurst cross, but just a cross. With a happy smile, he invites his friends, Rufuna and Goblin, to leave here. The cross. Rufuna and Goblin leave, leaving Albert, who is still sitting on the ground alone. He starts laughing hysterically, viciously. Albert thinks that the cross is behaving unreasonably. He reflects that the cross really thinks that it has defeated him, but he has another trump card. He pulls out of his pocket the servant's collar, with which he wants to subdue him. Albert notices that he has turned his back on him. He intends to put a collar on him and thinks that the cross will obey him and regret it for the rest of his life. Suddenly, several goblins attack him from above. They fall right on top of him, knocking him to the floor. The cross turns at Albert's scream to see what happened to him. Albert asks what it is all about. He shouts at them to let him go. The goblins begin to take off his clothes. Albert shouts at them to stop. He asks them why they undress him, and if they think they can get away with it so easily. The goblins lift 2 huge boulders and approach Albert. He asks what other stones they are and asks them to stop. Goblins drop rocks on him, and he screams loudly. The goblins crushed Albert's legs by throwing heavy stones at them. Albert is crying in pain and swearing loudly. Crest, watching what is happening, remembers that he learned something when he studied at the academy. He reflects that goblins in their mating season can attack a representative of another race if he is of the opposite sex. The goblins pick up Albert and leave. The cross is nervous, wondering if they might attack him too. One of the goblins that attacked Albert turns around and, smiling broadly, gives the goblin a thumbs up. The goblin, noticing her, also gives her a thumbs up, smiling happily. The goblins carry Albert screaming loudly into the forest. The cross says it doesn't even know if it's a good ending or a bad one. He sits down on a stump, tired of all these events that day. Goblin and Rufuna bring some fruits to the cross. Rufuna hands him a handful of grapes, and Goblin a peach. The cross asks them if they have collected it all for him and thanks them. He eats the peach that Goblin brought him and thinks about the fact that his brother called his gacha skill divine. He confesses to his friends that he thought his gacha skill was hellish and could not even think that he was capable of saving the upper world. He thinks about what will happen to the upper world if he is not there at this time. He believes that if the demons had attacked them, Alice would hardly have been able to do anything. The cross decides that he sincerely feels sorry for Mina because she is coping with her alone. Goblin and Rufuna begin to get indignant, and the cross apologizes to them. He tells them not to be afraid because he won't leave them anywhere. He confesses to them that he is sorry that they had to go through all this. The young man looks at the goblin and says that it seemed to him that the goblin woman gave her some kind of sign. Goblina pretends that she did not understand what the cross was telling her. She turns away from him and covers her face with her hands in embarrassment. The cross gets up from the stump and pulls himself up, saying that this day has been very long for him. He smiles and invites his friends to return home. Rufuna and Goblina happily agree to his proposal. Suddenly, somewhere in the forests there is a big explosion, which was noticed by Crest and his friends. Then they heard a loud sound from this explosion. Chapter 8.3. The cross does not understand what happened in the forest, not far from them, and assumes that it could be a monster. He says it's not good. The young man admits that he wants to return home as soon as possible, and that he doesn't really want to get into trouble right now. He decides that he still needs to take a look at it with his skills. The cross closes the gas and concentrates to use its skill called all-seeing technique. With this technique, somewhere in the distance he sees a cow that is preparing to attack a girl. The head of the cross widens in surprise. He realizes that there is a person there. The cross reflects that he has some kind of strange feeling. The girl in the forest is breathing heavily from fatigue. She is standing with a small sword in her hands in front of a huge cow that wants to attack her. She swings her sword with the last of her strength, trying to keep him away from her. However, out of impotence, she drops her sword to the ground, and she can no longer fight back. The cow moves, attacking the girl. She closes her eyes, thinking that this is the end for her. Suddenly, she hears a sound and opens her eyes to check what it was. In front of her stands a cross with a sword and holds back the cow's attack. The cross, holding the cow with the sword, turns slightly towards the girl. He says he will help her and asks her if she understands him. The girl replies that she understands, and the cross says that it's great. The young man calls Goblin and Rufuna and asks them to help him. They come, and together they defeat the cow. for which he received 200 points. The girl thanks them for their help, and the cross replies that everything is fine and not worth thanking. He clarifies with the girl that she seemed to be dizzy. The cross asks her if she is okay. The girl is shaking all over and says that she actually feels bad. The cross notices that she is all pale. He asks her to be patient for a while and uses his expertise skill. Many screens open in front of him, which warn of danger. On one of the screens, he reads that she has been poisoned with a deadly poison. He sees that she has 2 minutes and 42 seconds left to live. The girl falls to the ground because she is no longer able to stand. The cross tells the girl to hold on. He declares that he will immediately make a medicine for her that will cure her. He lifts the girl off the floor and brings a glass to her lips. He tells her to drink it, assuring her that it is an antidote and it will definitely help her. The girl drinks the whole glass completely and immediately begins to feel better. She says that the antidote was delicious, and her unpleasant feeling disappeared. The young man replies that it's just fine. The cross examines her carefully, wondering if she is definitely human. The girl admits that she tried such a delicious medicine for the first time. The cross realizes that when using that skill, he felt neither human nor demonic energy. Thinking about the situation, he, feeling awkward, asks her if she is human. The girl carefully removes the hood from her head, and the eyes of the cross widen in surprise. The girl turns out to have goblin sharp ears and small horns on her forehead. She asks the cross if she looks like a human being. The cross stared at the girl in shock, not knowing what to say to her. A girl with a smile on her face explains that she is the Goblin Queen. Chapter 9:1. The cross, hardly believing what he has heard, asks again if she is the Goblin Queen. The girl confidently replies that this is exactly the case. The cross reflects that sometimes beings of a non-human race are born with certain mutations that give them special abilities, and such are called kings or queens, and their purpose is to continue and protect their kind. The young man reflects that he learned about all this when he studied at the Academy for Aristocrats. The girl, feeling shy, hesitantly says that she has one important request for him. She looks at him with a pleading look and asks him if he could help her save her native village. The cross asks her exactly what she means by asking him to help save her village. The Goblin Queen replies that there is a village at the foot of this mountain where she lives. She says that today they were unexpectedly attacked by some poisonous creatures. She says that her village was able to get rid of them, but many residents of her village still managed to get poisoned by their poison. She bows her head and asks the cross to save them, with regret in her voice. The girl says that all those sent to the villagers will die if they do not help them in time. The cross thinks about the girl's request. The Goblin Queen is anxiously waiting for a response from the cross to her request. He tells her that it is too dangerous for them to move through the forest in such darkness. The cross uses its magic of light skill, and a small, floating ball appears above them, which glows brightly to illuminate their path. The Goblin Queen looks at the glowing ball in shock, thinking that it is very bright. The cross asks how many residents of her village have been poisoned. The girl replies that she thinks about 10 goblins were poisoned. Cross scratches his chin, repeating her words that there are 10 goblins sent to the village. He tells her that he will need to purchase some ingredients for the antidote to the poison along the way. The Goblin Queen asks him what is going on. He will help them. The cross replies that it sees no reason to refuse. He confidently promises her that he will save the inhabitants of her village at any cost. Cross, addressing Goblin and Rufan, asking them if they would mind walking a little more. The girl is deeply touched that the cross agreed to help her save her village. The girl sincerely thanks the cross. She claims that she will never forget his kindness to her in her life. The cross replies with a sweet smile that it's not a big deal. The cross says that he will have to ask her for something in return. The girl assumes that he wants to ask for land and labor. Crest says that he would like to make a new base in their village, and also for them to clean up there in his absence. He says he will pay and asks what she thinks. The Goblin Queen enthusiastically replies that he should leave it all to them. She says she's sure everyone in the village will be happy to see them. The cross offers to set them on their way. Crest recalls that that's how they introduced themselves to each other. He asks the girl to tell him her name. He gives his name and introduces his friends to her, Goblin and Rufan. The cross asks the girl what her name is. The Goblin Queen replies that her name is Livia. She says she's not very strong, but she'll be happy to work with him. In the bathhouse, the girls discuss that the other day Albert Bockhurst went to the lower world. One of the interviewees does not know which Albert she is talking about. Minu explains to Alice that Albert Bockhurst is the brother of Cross, her ex-fiancé. She asks her in surprise that, really, he didn't know about it. Alice replies that she is not interested in anyone except the cross itself, and adds that the word ex is superfluous. Minu says that the Massilian family planned to send troops to the lower world, but as the number of demons increased, protecting the upper one became a priority. So they ended up here. Alice says she wants it to stop as soon as possible. Alice wonders if Albert has brought the cross back to the upper world. Minu replies that they have lost sight of him, although they were already on his trail. Alice asks Mina if the report she has just received has anything to do with the Bauhurst family. Alice thinks about what happens. Her cross is alive. She admits to herself that she is glad of this. Alice asks Mina why she is so tense. She says that they can take their time, because the chosen ones from the Riffled army will definitely bring the cross back to the upper world, and asks her if she agrees with her. Minu asks why she should care. She claims that he won't come back anyway, no matter what they do. Minu admits that her only concern is that living in the lower world is extremely uncomfortable. Alice asks her if she is going to switch places with the cross. She asks Minu that it's not that simple down there. Minu replies that Alice is absolutely right. She says that if she does this, it is possible that she will never be able to go back. Chapter 9-2. There is a bag on the ground in the forest. The cross says that there are 10 needles of a poisonous bee and 5 fangs of a poisonous snake. He says he thinks it will be enough for an antidote to the poison. Livia bows and thanks him for helping her with the collection of materials. She says she put everything on them. The cross replies that since she has just been ill, she may not worry. He says Goblin and Rafuna wanted to fight. Livia shows them the way, and they head to her goblin village. Crest says that he has never had such a painful experience in the upper world, but now it's over. The cross says that the gacha skill is really good. He says that in order to change this, he needs to continue enslaving monsters. He admits that it is often difficult for him because there are skills that he cannot apply alone. Livia says she wants to see how the cross applies its gacha skill. She announces that she can already see her village. Goblins in the villages are looking for Livia. The goblin notices her and tells his friend to look in that direction. Livia runs to the goblins and they say they are glad that Livia is safe. The goblins swear at her, claiming that she disappeared from the village so suddenly. They say if she understands how worried they all were. Livia apologizes and clarifies that she, after all, left them a note. They shout at her, saying that they were so worried about it. The villagers ask her what she was thinking when she decided to go there alone with poisoning. Livia tells them that they can lecture her after that. Even more so, she says that this man cured her of poisoning with poison and points towards the cross. The goblin asks what kind of savior did this miracle. The goblins start shouting that it's a man. They ask what a man is doing in their village. Livia politely asks the goblins to calm down. She explains that this is not just a man, but her savior named the cross. The goblin reminds Livia that humans have banished them to the underworld. Livia replies that the past cannot be changed, and now their main priority is saving the lives of villagers. The goblins agree with her and tell the cross to go to the place where all the inhabitants lie, who were poisoned by the venom of those creatures that attacked their village. The goblins sent by the poison are lying on the floor. Feeling terrible torment, Livia approaches the male goblin, calling him Gobzo. He wants to say something to her, but is interrupted. Livia gives him a cup with the antidote and tells him that everything will be fine. She asks him to drink the contents of the glass. Gobzo drinks the entire glass of antidote in one gulp. The goblin examines himself, not believing that he feels normal. The goblin girl screams that they are fine. She jumps into his arms and tells him that she was so worried about him. The goblin boy claims that it is indeed a miracle. The goblins approach the cross and apologize for the disrespect they showed him when he first came to them. They say he cured all of them, so he's the real savior of their village. Livia turns to the goblins and tells them that as soon as they finish treating them, they will move on. She asks Mabzo-sama to get some rest. Goblins surround Livia. They ask if it was her. They say that she always does this and add that this time it was too selfish. Livia starts to panic and apologizes to all the goblins. Livia and the cross are sitting in the village house. Livia informs him that this is her house and it also has a place for guests, so he can stay there. Livia admits that in fact, she would like to arrange a welcome dinner for him, but she must be responsible for leaving the village. Cross says he is grateful that she lent him a bed. Crest claims that he is impressed not only by the exterior of the house, but also by its interior. Livia notices that the bed is just fallen leaves from the trees. He looks at Rufuna and Goblina, noticing that they are all already fast asleep. He decides that he should lie down too, otherwise he has one fight all day. He says he needs to take a break. Cross uses his item creation, potion, and water magic skills to create a glass cup and an energy potion. The Cross drinks a potion and reflects on the fact that skills do not activate if you do not hurry up with their names. He remembers how he made the sword and thinks that if he looks back at it now, he can't afford to think about making objects. He notices 2 burning candles not far from him. He closes his eyes and uses the put out the fire skill. Both candles go out instantly, and the cross realizes that everything is unchanged. He decides that it's time for him to sleep and lie down on his bed of fallen leaves from the trees. The cross reflects that there are many terms, the meaning of which he does not know. For example, gacha, skill, half-man, demon, and the border of the lower world. The next day, the goblins in the village are surprised by something. They say it's cool. The cross builds a house in their village with the help of his skill and tells them that the house is built in an instant, and in structure and complexity is the same as that of Libya. Cross says that, by the way, he is thinking of rebuilding their homes, which were damaged during the attack. He asks them if it's okay if they're the same. The goblins eagerly nod their heads in agreement. The cross asks them if they don't know when these creatures can still attack the village. He is rebuilding the damaged houses. The goblins loudly thank the cross, and Livia, hearing this, turns around. She goes up to the cross and tells it that it is really amazing. The cross replies that he just has such a skill. He notices that Livia is holding a cooking knife and asks her if she is cooking now. The girl replies that she is giving him a helping hand. Chapter 9.3. There is a crab on the table next to other products. The cross says that this is a baby crab and it will become especially tasty if you make it into sashimi. He adds that they can cook a wonderful soup from the remains of this crab. Livia asks him about sashimi and soup. Because she doesn't know what it is, she asks the cross what it is. Goblin girls ask each other if they know such dishes, but no one understands what they are. The cross pours soup into a cup for them and tells them that when meat is cooked in this way, it has a taste. Salt should be added. Livia asks again about salt and says she didn't know that such a thing existed. Livia tastes the cooked soup and exclaims that it is very tasty. She says it just tastes great. The cross replies to her that he is glad. Livia claims that he knows a lot of things and, moreover, knows how to handle an iron cup that stands on a bonfire. She admits that no one in the village even knew about it. The cross notices a goblin using his hands to pour water on another goblin. A goblin who washes under running water screams for him to better regulate the temperature of the water. He asks him to be quiet, because it is difficult for him to concentrate in such a noise. The cross asks Livia if this goblin can use magic. The girl replies that it is. She explains that they can use some other magical skills. The girl watches the goblins and adds that, however, this goblin is the only one in their village who can use water magic. The cross says that then they can use the bath to reduce the load on their magician. The girl does not understand what the cross is talking about. She asks him what a bath is. Cross uses his blacksmithing skill and creates a small bathtub. He points at her and says that, for example, this is what a bathtub looks like. Livia inspects her admiringly, saying that's what it is. She asks the cross how to use it. The cross is dissatisfied, thinking about what is wrong with this village. Night falls and Livia's house is illuminated only by the light of the crescent moon. The cross asks Goblina and Rufuna if they both live in such a kennel. The cross says that after all, they really are monsters. He wonders if they will calm down in such a quiet place. The cross lies down on his new bed and says that he has not slept in such a soft bed for a long time. He claims that he seems to be floating in the air. He remembers sleeping on a bed made of fallen tree leaves and thinking that if Livia would allow her house to be rebuilt, then he would like a more comfortable bed for himself. The cross reflects that sashimi and soup are unusual things for the inhabitants of this village. He decides that he doesn't want to think about them in a biased way, but it's just weird. Livia asks the cross if he is still awake. The young man replies that he has not yet, and Livia carefully goes into his room. She comes into his room and stands in front of his bed. The cross, seeing her, immediately jumps out of bed and looks at her with undisguised shock on his face. A confused Livia stands in front of him in a very revealing outfit. The cross, puzzled, asks her what happened. Livia bows to the cross and says that she, as the head of this village, would like to thank him for everything he has done for them. Livia claims that thanks to him, the standard of living in the village has increased significantly. The cross nervously replies that they still have everything ahead of them. Livia stands up and says that she is the leader, so she must protect the village. She admits that she can't go on like this anymore, otherwise she will cause their death. Cross, nervous, tells her not to be so pessimistic. Livia climbs onto his bed, telling him that she has one request for him. Cross is confused by Livia's actions, and he wants to tell her something, but the girl interrupts him to tell him about her request. Livia, the goblin queen and head of the village, asks the cross if he could marry her. The cross gaped in surprise. He can't believe this offer. Chapter 10:1. Livia is moving closer to the cross. He begins to realize why she is so openly dressed. The cross sarcastically thinks that there is nothing like staying alone in bed with a guy at night. He believes that this will not be taught in noble houses and is surprised that she wants to do this. Livia is shaking with fear and uncertainly suggests to the Cross that they consolidate their marriage agreement. Livia falls on the bed and the Cross anxiously calls her. He asks her if she's okay. The Cross assures her that it will not force her to do anything. Livia is disappointed to say that she cannot. The Cross exhales with relief. He tells her that she doesn't have to do anything. He assures her that if she has any problems, then let her just tell him about them. Livia is sitting with tears in her eyes after talking about what worries her. The Cross clarifies whether their problem is an alliance with werewolves. They are sitting on the bed of the Cross, and Livia sadly replies that union is just a name, because in fact, they want them to be completely under their control. She says that in addition, it seems that they are having a crisis due to the recent outbreak of monsters, so they are in dire need of offspring from goblins who have the opportunity to mate not only with their own, but also with other races. Livia explains that if everything goes the same way, then soon the werewolves will completely capture them. The Cross begins to realize that this is the reason for the wedding, which Livia offered him. The Cross gets out of bed and apologizes, saying that he does not like arranged marriages and the like. He declares that they will not have a wedding. Livia remains sitting on the bed, upset, because she believes that her village is over. The Cross drapes his jacket over Livia. He says he can't turn a blind eye to the fact that she and the rest of the goblins are in a difficult position. He confidently declares that he will help them. Livia, touched by his kindness, thanks him with tears in her eyes. Livia jumps out of bed and hugs Cross tightly, thanking him. The Cross, feeling embarrassed, asks her if she could get dressed. Livia replies that she is sorry that he saw her in such an outfit. She admits that she never wears it much and tells him not to think anything bad about her. The Cross assures her that he didn't think anything. She tells her not to worry. Cross thinks to himself that it was a very radical outfit. At this time, the girl changes into her usual clothes. The Cross remembers about the clothes. He asks Livia if she is interested in clothes or something like that. Livia replies that if you think about it that way, she doesn't have much interest in her. She says that in the past there were craftsmen who worked on it, but now they are not there. So there is no one to sew clothes, and then interest in this began to disappear in the village. Livia says she means that her clothes are inherited from her ancestors, so she has nothing to forgive to wear them. Crest reflects that they don't really understand this. Although they know how to work with weapons and agricultural tools, the Cross realizes that they have no continuity of technology. He thinks that in the upper world, there are many technologies besides weapon possession that can be learned, but here they are dead. Livia keeps saying something about her clothes. The Cross understands that it does not know what is the reason for their degradation, but if it goes on like this, the clan and the village will die out. He's calling Livia. He uses the tailoring technology skill and hands her new clothes, asking her how about trying them on. Livia changes into the new clothes that the Cross gave her and examines herself. She claims it's very cute. Crest replies that he is glad that she liked it. Livia asks the Cross if she can keep it for herself. The young man replies that of course she can. Livia thanks the Cross and promises him that she will keep these clothes for the rest of her life. The next day, in the village, in a special place, Cross, Livia, Rufuna, and Goblin are sitting waiting for the werewolves. Chapter 10-2. The werewolf king named Orpheus approaches the Cross and Livia. He tells Livia that he is glad that she came to him. Orpheus and the Cross look resolutely into each other's eyes. Orpheus sits down in front of them. Livia tells Orpheus that they haven't seen each other for a long time. The king of the werewolves invites them to return to the topic of their conversation. He assumes that if she came here, it means that she still agreed to their union. Livia confidently replies that she did not agree and declares that she refuses to talk about it. Orpheus is surprised and says that he seems to have misheard her. The king of the werewolves offers to repeat everything again, assuring that this is for loyalty. He repeatedly asks if she came to him because she finally agreed to an alliance between werewolves and goblins. Livia also resolutely responds that it did not agree to this alliance. She recalls that, as she said earlier, she refuses to talk about it. Suddenly, the werewolves surround them from all sides. Orpheus says there's nothing you can do about it then. He goes out to his village and shouts to the residents of his village to take their weapons. He announces that they are going to the goblin village. The Cross approaches Orpheus and asks him to wait a bit. The werewolf king asks him who else he is. The Cross gives his name and says that although he is human, he is indebted to the goblin village for his own reasons. A crowd of werewolves begin to discuss that there is a human in front of them. They wonder what he's doing in the underworld. The Cross tells Orpheus that they are not here to fight them. He announces that they want to form an alliance with them, but only so that it is on equal terms. The king of the werewolves asks again what equal conditions he is talking about. Orpheus claims that proud werewolves are no match for some goblins. The werewolves support their king's words and suggest that he kill them all. The werewolves that surrounded them begin to slowly move in. Orpheus notices Goblin and Rufuna standing ready to fight the werewolves. He thinks about this goblin and the wolf. Orpheus calls them and asks who gave this monster a magical name. The cross is in no hurry to answer the king's question, thinking about what he means by talking about the magic name. Livia exclaims that it was of course a cross. She claims that unlike the others, he has many different abilities, and for him to give magical names to demons is like just having breakfast. The cross whispers in Livia's ear to take her time and asks her what the magic name is. Livia asks in surprise that, it turns out, she gave it to two creatures, but he does not know what it is at all. Livia explains that a magical name is a special name given to specific creatures under certain conditions, and it is said that a person with such an estate is given power-ups for various abilities, so that you can immediately feel the result. The cross asks the girl if Livia is also a magical name. Orpheus tells the cross that he will consider him a representative from the goblin village. The king of the werewolves declares that, therefore, he challenges him to a duel. Orpheus suggests that if he wins the duel, the goblins will follow them and only they will give them magical names. Livia exclaims that this agreement is unilateral. The cross suddenly interrupts Livia and says that this is normal. He asks the werewolf king what would happen if he won their duel. They stand in front of each other, and Orpheus replies that then he can do whatever he wants. He announces that it's time to stop talking nonsense. Orpheus shouts that he, the king of the werewolves and the representative of the goblin cross, announce a duel. Livia apologizes to the cross. He asks her what she's apologizing for. Livia replies that as a result, all the blame fell on him. The cross tells her not to worry. He claims that her name became the subject of a bargain, and it's good that it didn't come to war. The cross admits that it does not want to be unreasonable. He tells Livia that he hates being exploited unilaterally. She takes his hands in hers and turns to him. Livia looks at the cross with a determined look and wishes him good luck in battle. The cross and Orpheus stand opposite each other with swords and the duel begins. Orpheus attacks the cross from above, but the cross manages to notice him. Chapter 10:3. Orpheus makes a small crack in the ground with his sword, but does not touch the cross. He attacks him once more, but the cross dodges all his attacks. The werewolves watching the fight ask why he avoids all the attacks of their king. They exclaim that he can't do anything about it anyway. Orpheus shouts that it's useless if he decided to wear him out. He claims that the cross seems to greatly underestimate the physical strength that wolves possess. The cross dodges his next attack and thinks that it has been a long time since he fought with swords, but his body remembers what he was taught in an aristocratic school in fencing lessons. The young man reflects that he should not rush too much. He needs to be calmer and regain full control of the situation. Orpheus attacks him with a loud shout. The cross notices that there is a chance here and uses his martial arts skill. He punches Orpheus in the hand with which he holds his sword. Orpheus feels terrible pain from his blow, and his hand begins to bleed. The cross attacks Orpheus with a sword, but he manages to dodge. The cross takes aim and attacks Orpheus. The young man points his sword slightly to the right of Orpheus' head so as not to kill him. Someone announces that it looks like they have a duel winner. The werewolves discuss that it cannot be that King Orpheus lost to him. Orpheus closes his eyes and tells the cross to kill him, because now he is too ashamed to live. Cross puts his sword on his shoulder and asks if someone wants to kill him. He asks Orpheus if he didn't say that if he won the duel, he would be able to do anything. He claims that the whole point is that he wants Orpheus to live. The cross says that he will live and make an alliance with them, the goblins, and of course that the union will be on equal terms for all. The cross claims that his shame is not to stay alive, but that he wanted to leave his people and die first. Werewolves cry and shout that this is true. They say that he is the only one they consider the rightful heir of their family. They ask how they would have lived without him if King Orpheus had left them. Orpheus gets to his feet. He is embarrassed by such attention and beats the nearest werewolf, ordering them not to show him their weakness. He bows in front of the cross, calling it his boss. The cross does not understand what is happening. Orpheus declares that if he wants to use it somehow, then he would like to be his sword. The cross, who did not expect this, asks him to wait a little. Orpheus shouts to the werewolves that from today on, Crest Sama is their boss. The werewolves kneel in front of the cross. The cross asks them to give him something to say. He announces that he is not going to be their leader. The young man wonders if it is so easy to forbid them to consider him their boss. Livia stands behind him and calls for the cross. Livia admits that she was also impressed by what he said earlier, so she will also swear allegiance to him. The cross realizes that Livia is going there too, and thinks that everything is so fast. The werewolves shout that the cross is their leader. Their leader. The cross stands with a displeased face, thinking that they are all so simple. Cross says he's not going to be their boss. He adds that if the werewolves and goblins sign an alliance in this way, then it will be justified, and then he needs to be their boss. The werewolf crowd cheers upon hearing his statement. The cross turns to Orpheus. He says that Livia will not have to marry him. Orpheus replies that of course, because they agreed, and then sharply asks him again. Orpheus asks the cross what he is talking about, because he was not going to start a family. Livia asks if that's what they offered her when they talked about the alliance between goblins and werewolves. Orpheus replies that he just needed strong warriors, and once upon a time, he heard about the fighting power possessed by goblin queens. Livia exclaims that she made a big mistake by turning herself into a tragic heroine. The cross replies that everything turned out quite well as a result. The cross asks Orpheus if he needs strong warriors because of the demons that are growing stronger in the lower world. He replies that this is not entirely true. Orpheus explains that for some of his purposes, he needs more than one strong warrior. The cross asks him if he could tell him more about this goal of his. Orpheus replies that something he is going to talk about is the monstrous past that happened in their village. He says that this is the story of a werewolf fighter who was blinded by his sins. Chapter 11:1. The goblin boy asks if Cross Sama and Livia San are alright. His friend tells him that these two cannot fail and clarifies if this is the case. Another goblin breaks into their house, informing them that they are in danger. They leave their house, and the goblin says that a horde of werewolves is heading towards their village. The boy asks what this means, and if he wants to say that Crest and Livia were killed at a meeting with werewolves. 3 goblins meet a crowd of werewolves who have come to their village. The werewolves bow to the goblins and apologize for any inconvenience. Orpheus is sitting in front of Livia and the cross. He says that they used to live in a village further north. Orpheus says that at that time his father was their king, and he had to decide who would succeed him. Orpheus tells us that his father died, or rather was killed by his brother Word before he could declare his heir. Orpheus explains that his father wrote his name on a tablet, calling him his heir, and when his brother found out about it, he flew into a rage and killed him on the spot. The werewolf king says that he also accused him of murdering his father, and they even tried to execute him. Livia regretfully replies that it is terrible, but the cross listens in silence. The werewolves say that their boss was a principled man and treated them well. Orpheus points at the 2 werewolves and admits that he was on the verge of execution when these guys from his father's group saved him, so he managed to escape. Orpheus claims that he should have told them about it first, because they could have put themselves in danger by detaining him. The cross touches his shoulder and tells him not to worry, because they have made an alliance. Orpheus replies that he appreciates it. The cross suggests that they do this and think about how to triple their life in the village. He says that the first is the issue of segregation, which has stood before. The cross apologizes to the goblins for the fact that so abruptly the werewolf tribe decided to move to their village. Orpheus asks the goblins to give him and his guys jobs so that they apologize to them for the trouble he caused them. The goblin boy replies that they won't give them a job. However, another goblin remembers something and interrupts him, saying that if Livia and the cross don't mind, the cross informs that he is now going to explore the western part. Goblin asks him if he is going to use his skills to build a house. The young man replies that these werewolves cut down trees and build houses themselves. The goblin is surprised by this. The cross points to the werewolf girl and says that they have someone who has the skill of building. The girl says that she is pleased to meet and adds that she can only draw drawings, but is not even close to the level of the cross. The young man announces that from now on he wants them and her team to build houses in the goblin village, and they can also bring other skills such as cooking, farming, and making clothes for the development of this village. The goblins exclaim that they have never thought about the development of the village before. They rejoice, saying it's pretty cool. The goblins surround the cross and ask if they can help him with anything. The cross announces that they are going to cut down firewood for the houses first. Werewolves and goblins work together. First, they cut down the trees in the forest. Then, they start building houses in the village. At night, someone in the house suggests celebrating the friendship between goblins and werewolves. They fight with mugs against each other. Goblins and werewolves are sitting at the same table at dinner. Livia walks up to the cross and he says she's just in time. He says that he would like everyone to look in their direction a little bit. The cross confidently announces that it will give a magical name to the Goblin Queen and the Werewolf King. A few hours before, they ask the cross to take a little of his attention. The cross asks them what happened. Livia replies that she has an urgent request for him. She claims that she understands that this is too much, but asks him if he can give them a magical name. Chapter 11:2. The cross calmly replies that he doesn't mind it at all. He asks Orpheus and Livia when they will start giving them magical names. Orpheus is surprised by such a quick response from him. Livia asks the cross if he is sure of this. Orpheus says that he once heard that this is a rather complicated ritual. The cross replies that this is not the case, and he just calls them. The cross asks them if they are sure that they want to keep the magic name the way they have it now. Orpheus agrees, and Livia says that she also wants to remain Livia. The cross is thinking about something. The cross announces that tonight, they will hold a ceremony in front of everyone to give them magical names. Orpheus is on one knee in front of the cross, which tells him that from now on, he allows him to take the name Orph as a magical name. The cross enters the magical name of Orpheus through the keyboard on the screen. He opens his eyes and, looking at himself, exclaims that he feels a surge of strength in his body. The cross performs the same ceremony with Livia. He says that he allows her to take the name Livia as her magic name. He also types her name on the screen. Livia is beginning its transformation. She recalls that Goblina told her that her appearance had changed after adopting a magical name and hopes that she can do so too. She opens her eyes and starts looking at her body. Livia regretfully clarifies to the cross that she has not changed at all. The cross looks at her stats on the screen and replies that this is not the case, because her status has increased significantly. Livia thanks him in disappointment. The cross approaches the goblins and werewolves, who gathered to watch the cross give magical names to the Goblin Queen and the Werewolf King. He apologizes to them for making them all wait so long. He announces that they will now give them all magical names. They are surprised to ask the cross if he is going to give them magical names too. The cross replies that of course it is going to. The cross explains that they will develop the village together, so the status of each villager should also be high. The crowd starts screaming, because everyone wants to get their magic name as soon as possible. The cross asks you to give your name first. He tells them to take their time and get in line. In the upper world, King Resifal orders his subjects to raise their heads. 3 dukes stand in front of him, and the king informs them that he would like to discuss with each of them the current situation in their country. The king says that, first of all, they will start with the Habast house. The head of the Habast family informs that the Alabrido has not yet been found. However, they are doing their best in their situation. The king interrupts him and says that's not what he's asking him at all. The king asks him if the cross has returned yet. He orders them to immediately send a new search party to the underworld. The father of the cross replies that there are so many demons in this territory that they cannot cope with all of them. Alice's father adjusts his glasses and addresses King Resifal. He argues that if they want to ensure the return of the cross to the upper world, then they should send Alice to the lower world to search for it. Minu's father denies his words. He tells King Resifal that he thinks Mina will be the best choice to find the cross in the lower world, because she can act on her own, without any escort. The king replies that neither is a good choice, because even now Alice defends the city using her skills from under the earthly temple. He says they can't be sure that they won't be attacked by stronger demons in the future. Alice's father says that it will be so. He assures that the mine will be enough to protect the upper world and asks to send in search of Alice. Mina's father shouts that the upper world needs Alice's skills, and he'd better send Mina to the lower world to search. Alice and Mina's fathers are arguing among themselves about who should be sent to the underworld. Mina stands wondering when she will see the cross again. In the lower world, someone says to keep a close eye on the enemy. He tells Livia that her body is being carried away after she swings her sword. Livia defeats the garden monster with just her sword. She exclaims that she has succeeded, and the cross praises her. The cross reflects that he gave all the villagers a magical name, so now he is teaching them how to hunt and handle weapons. Crest admits that he did not expect Livia's fencing skills to go so far. Livia replies that she is also surprised. She explains that monkeys have been tormenting goblins for many years, and she cannot believe that the name allowed her to defeat them so easily. Goblin informs Livia that they have found some mushrooms they know. The goblin boy tells the cross that she looks like the old Livia again. They're watching Livia, which tells the goblins something about the mushrooms they found. He says that since Livia met at the cross, she laughs a lot, just like a little girl. The boy asks the cross to continue to be a source for her support. The young man looks at Livia, who happily waves at him and answers the boy that of course he will. Livia apologizes to him for keeping him waiting. She asks if the cross knows how to eat monkey meat. The cross looks at the body of the beast and replies that such flesh is not his. He notices something in the corpse of this monkey. An inscription appears above the dead body of the monster, meaning that 300 points are given for it. The cross is surprised to see them. Livia, noticing his strange reaction to the monkey, asks him if something is wrong. The cross replies that everything is fine. He wonders if they don't see glasses when they defeat enemies. The cross suggests that Livia continue hunting, because they may be nearby. The cross believes that this cannot be. He's shouting at the whole village. The cross reads on its screen that it has 15,000 points and has accumulated 33 times the Gachai. Chapter 11.3. Cross realizes that he doesn't remember scoring points during the day. He also remembers this number, which appeared on the day when Livia killed one demon. The cross assumes that the glasses of the creature to which he gave the magical name will go to him. He doesn't believe this and asks if it's serious. The cross tells itself to be calmer. He believes that this is indeed a level that was later revised downward, and then he got only one. He decides that before everything is fixed, he will pretend that he did not notice it and quickly restore order there. Livia suddenly enters the room of the cross and asks if he can have a few words. The cross is startled by surprise and asks what is the matter. Livia clarifies whether he was busy with something before her appearance. The cross replies that no, it wasn't. He says that he just looks at his screen with a gacha. The young man points towards the screen with the gacha and says that the screen is coming in here. He asks if Livia sees him. She replies that she doesn't see anything. The girl asks if she can watch it next to him if it doesn't cause him any inconvenience. The cross replies that it can, but he does not think that she knows exactly what she needs to do. Livia touches her shoulders to the cross and claims that just being next to it makes her feel like she's starting to understand it. Livia suddenly saw the Gachai screen. She informs the cross that she saw it too, and he is surprised by it. The young man asks her if she is telling the truth. Livia assumes it's because she touched him. The cross replies that then he will be able to show her what gacha is. Livia stands in front of him and asks what it is. She sits very close to him and asks him to show her what a gacha is. The cross is embarrassed, but agrees to her request. He wonders if this is some kind of custom of theirs. Cross reflects that after what happened last night, he'd better not ask too many questions. He suggests that she do the first 11 rounds together. Balls with abilities appear, and Livia is amazed. She looks at the balls and asks him if this is the gacha of skills. She says that she is so sparkling and beautiful, and these rainbow-colored balls look like precious stones. She reaches out her hand to one of the skill balls. Livia reports that these balls have started to glow. The cross explains that the balls from this gacha have rarity levels: rainbow, gold, silver, and bronze. And the best skills are possessed by balls that have a rainbow color. Livia asks if this is a summoner. Cross replies that it is a skill that instantly summons contract demons to him. He tells her that the rainbow ball always brings an improved skill every month, and in May he has already received 3 different summoning skills. Livia asks him if she can spin again if she gets these 3 types. The cross replies that it is impossible, because if she gets the same skill, the bonus is over, and the effect will add up, but you will need a maximum of 4 rainbow balls. The girl asks him if she can see all the skills that she got from scrolling Gachai. The cross easily agrees to her request, offering to open them all at once. Livia exclaims that there are so many skills. The cross notes that the colors of steel are for skills that enhance abilities, silver for technology, and gold for magical skills, with the exception of the rainbow, since it has no limit. The girl is looking at a lot of different skills and balls. She notices the new skills and asks if there weren't any. Cross replies that he has raised the level of many useful skills, so the results are pretty good. Livia anxiously asks him if it could be that the results were worse because of her presence. The cross calms her down, saying that this is usually how it happens when he is alone. He adds that besides, he was here all alone, so it's a lot of fun for him to figure out the gacha together with Livia. Livia laughs happily and replies that she is glad then too. After a while, the cross calls Livia, but she does not answer. He notices that she has already fallen asleep. The cross reflects on the goblin who said that Livia has always been so collected in the role of leader, and since the cross Sama arrived, she began to look like a child of her age. He puts her to bed and covers her with a blanket, deciding that she has played enough gacha and is tired. so let her rest. There are girls in the forest at night, and werewolves from the northern village appear in front of them. They ask the girls if they are here to form an alliance with them. The king of the werewolves, Orpheus' brother, says that they should not compare him to this imposter wolf cub, and maybe he offers alliances, but his only condition is that they will be subordinate to him. He tells them to choose. He gives them a choice. Either they will be his servants, or they are dying right now on the spot. Chapter 12:1. The cross of Orpheus looks at the footprints in the forest, which clearly belong to some dangerous and large beast. Orpheus suggests that this sign belongs to none other than the Poikin snake. He notices that he is quite big. The cross reflects that in order to prepare for their battle with the war wolves in the north, they decided that it was necessary to assemble a Gachai point in the northern region. The cross asks Orpheus if they have not yet reached the territory of the northern wolves. He says no and tells him not to worry about it. The cross asks the werewolf if there are any villages nearby that do not belong to werewolves. He suggests that they could form an alliance with them. Orpheus says that he needs to think and tries to remember the villages nearby. He says he thinks there is a slime tribe. A large snake notices the slime and starts hunting for it. She runs away, but the snake crawls after her to eat her. Orpheus falls on top of the snake and pierces it through with his sword. He screams for her to get it. However, the snake moves on, despite its injury. Livia appears with a loud shout and a sword in her hands. She stabs the snake in the head with her sword. The snake, defeated by them, falls to the ground right in front of the slime that it wanted to kill. Livia asks Slime if she's okay. The slime replies that it is fine and thanks them for their rescue. The cross is surprised. He watches as an ordinary slime transforms into a girl. He clarifies whether she is a slime. She replies that it is and asks who they are. The cross responds that he is human, but solves problems in the nearby goblin villages. Livia says she's one of the goblin queens. They point to Orpheus standing next to them and say that there is still him. The girl is very scared when she sees Orpheus in front of her. She exclaims that it's a werewolf. She asks if these aren't the same werewolves. The girl turns back into slime. Orpheus asks her to wait a bit. Slime sits on a tree and tells them that the wolf tribe that offered them an alliance has been trying to weave them together from the very beginning. She says many of their people died and their villages were burned to the ground, and now they are hiding in the forest. Orpheus regretfully says that this is all his fault, because if he had the strength, then this would not have happened. The cross, after a silent thought, asks the girl to do him a favor. He says he wants them to form an alliance with werewolves and goblins. The girl is considering his offer. She agrees and says she will escort them to the village of Slime. She assumes they're not the worst guys. They all head to the village of Slime together, and the girl informs them that regardless of whether they get out of the village alive or not, it all depends on their village chief. On the way, Orpheus apologizes to the cross. He claims it's his fault that the slime hates him. The cross replies that it's not his fault. They go into the cave, and the cross explains to him that it is much more important to think about the future than to dwell on the past, which he cannot change. The cross asks the girl if there is a village in one of these caves. She replies that she is right ahead. The girl says that this cave is full of puddles and leads to several exits, so it's a good place to hide in case they're being watched. The cross thinks that they will have to work hard to catch them off guard. They see a light at the end of the tunnel and go to the exit. The girl shows that this is their village. She then clarifies that this is a large swamp that is right in front of them right now. The slimes begin to get out of their hiding places. They discuss that humans and demons have come to them. Then they notice the werewolf. They are shouting for them to leave their village. Someone says to kill them, because they can't let them know that they live here. The girl comes out from under her shelter and tells the residents of her village to calm down. She stands in front of the new guests and asks the man who he is. She says she wants them to know that they are not welcome here. Chapter 12:2. The head of the village of Slime, embodied in the image of a beautiful girl, tells the cross, the goblin queen, and the werewolf king that as for saving people from their village, she, for her part, sincerely thanks them all for this. She sits in the center of a large flower near a tree and claims that the cross is a man who was exiled by his family from the upper world to the lower world and has a desire to unite non-humans and demons together. She asks him what they want from them. Cross replies to her that they want to create an alliance between them. Goblins and werewolves. He tells her that while the werewolves from the north pose a threat to the lives of all of them, he believes that they should combine all their efforts together. The young man informs her that he knows that they are extremely concerned about the fact that there is a tribe of werewolves in their camp. However, he assures her that Orpheus will never cause any harm to a detachment of civilians. He says he is confident that they will be able to help them. The girl calmly answers him that she knows why their slime tribe hates all werewolves so fiercely, but besides that they have another reason why they do not want to form an alliance with him: werewolves and goblins. The head of the slime tribe looks directly at the cross with his cold gaze and tells him that they, the slime, also hate humans. The cross is very surprised, obviously not expecting such words from the girl. The Queen of Slimes asks him if he is from the upper world. She asks him if he has ever heard of Aquafield. He replies that he has heard of him because he is in the neighborhood. He says that this is a large logistics center where there are waterways running through the whole country steadily all year round. The girl says that at first glance it is an ideal place. She claims that this utopia was created using slimes as servants. She says that during stormy days, the slimes worked together to control the flooding of waterways, and some of them had to do terrible things. The girl says that they lived like weak-willed servants, but at the same time they became more and more aware of themselves. She says that they naturally decided to run away from them. She asks Cross if he suggests how they were able to escape from people. The cross suggests that they had a kind of transitional magic circle in their country that teleported them all from the upper world to the lower world. The Queen of Slimes replies that it wasn't quite like that. She tells them that they all fell into the river. She admits that they had no idea where they could go. She says that, hiding from the eyes of their guards, she ran down the river and fell into a large waterfall. She says the next thing she remembers is being washed ashore. She remembers that when she was lying on the shore of the waterfall, her body had already acquired a human appearance. She continues to feel her face, plunging into her memories. Her sad look reflects the tragedy of the events that happened to their slime tribe through the fault of people from the upper world. The girl gently touches her face and tells them that this is such an irony. She confesses to them that she thought and hoped that she would be able to forget about everything in a place where there are no people at all. But her body took the form of a subhuman. She continues her story and admits that she told them everything, and even what she shouldn't have told them. The head of the slime village asks them if they now understand the reason for the slime's hatred towards humans. The cross replies that she can hate him as much as she likes. However, when a tribe of wolves from the north invade them, they will treat them as badly as people did then, and maybe even worse. The head of the village listens attentively to the cross. The head of the slime tribe, after listening carefully to the cross, confidently answers him that he is seriously mistaken about this. The words she uttered evoke an incredible feeling of surprise in the cross. She says they have already been deceived. The head of the village claims that if they try hard, they will not lose. She explains that they have low resistance to magic, and they can only use physical attacks, which will be their advantage. The cross looks closely at the Queen of Slimes and thinks that if they were more serious, their enemies would not be so strong. He thinks she may not express it, but he can tell for sure that this is exactly what she is thinking about right now. He asks the girl if they really don't want to form an alliance with them. The head of the tribe replies that she does not intend to form an alliance because she does not want to aggravate her problems by getting involved in all this. She declares that they will solve their own problem with the tribe of fighting wolves from the north and suggests that they do not interfere with each other. The cross is beginning to realize that it turns out that the slimes are taking a neutral position in this war. He decides that it is not worth continuing to persuade the slime tribe to form an alliance with them and tells the head of the village that he understood her. After finishing their negotiations, they shake hands goodbye and introduce themselves. The head of the slime tribe says that her name is Sufi, and the young man calls his name a cross. The cross and the others are coming back. The girl is a werewolf who has the skill of building and the rest of the werewolves, and the goblins from her team listen carefully to what the cross tells them. She asks him again if he wants them to build a wall. The cross explains that he would like something very durable, preferably made of stone and with pointed ends at the end of the logs. He admits that he doesn't have the right skills to do this alone. The girl replies that she understood him. The cross adds that they also could use a tower that would be high enough for them to look far from it. The werewolf girl, feeling the excitement of such a volume of work, promises him that she will try to do it all. She asks the cross what happens. The war with the fighting wolves from the north is about to begin. He tells her that it's not accurate yet, but they still need to be ready, so they'd better all get to work right now. The girl returns to her team, telling them the words of the cross that it's time to get to work. The crowd of werewolves and goblins who are engaged in construction in the village rejoice. The cross turns to the young goblins and werewolves, telling them that the most dexterous will take turns looking after the slime village, because it is in greater danger than they are. He remembers that they promised not to interfere with them, but he just doesn't want any more victims. He announces that they also need to forge new weapons and tells the goblins who know the art of forging to get to work. He enthusiastically shouts to all the villagers that it's time to get to work, and the crowd cheers. The cross, deciding that, at this time, He needs to go and help the villagers with fortifications. Goes there. Orpheus discovers the cross and shouts his name so that he will pay attention to it. The werewolf king Orpheus turns to the young man and resolutely tells him that he needs him to study with him. After a while, Livia stands in the middle of the forest and excitedly watches the training battle. The cross and the werewolf king fight each other with swords, sparing no effort and each other. The cross knocks Orpheus's sword out of his hands with its attack. Orpheus, realizing his defeat in his training duel with the cross, begins to shake with anger and resentment. He immediately asks him to fight him one more time. The cross calmly explains to Orpheus that if he is in such a hurry, he will never be able to learn anything. The cross tells Orpheus that after a short break, they will continue their training. Orpheus informs him that he feels his status has increased significantly after the cross gave him a magical name. However, he remembers his brother Word, who mercilessly killed their father. Orpheus admits that he will never forget the way he looked at him after he killed their father, the last king of the werewolves. Orpheus declares that he should not be like his brother. Orpheus regretfully says that he will not be able to defeat his older brother, who is the leader of a tribe of fighting wolves from the north. The cross is starting to think what they can do about it. After a short thought, a new idea comes to the cross. Chapter 12:3. The cross asks Livia and Orpheus if they have ever studied any kind of fencing. Orpheus replies that he is not, but although he is learning to use a sword for self-defense, Livia says she doesn't have what he calls fencing either. The young man asks the werewolf king if he has noticed anything interesting about their sword duels, which they conduct to train their skills. Orpheus thinks about it and begins to remember his past sword fights with the cross. He tells the cross that during their sword fights, it seemed to him that he had a certain mobility that he always observed. The cross, with a smile on his lips, says that he is absolutely right about this, and that is what fencing is called. The cross explains to the goblin queen Livia and the werewolf king Orpheus that during the battle, he combines his practical skills with his magical skills. The young man says that, for example, he uses his fire magic in order to heal his body and increase the speed of the attack that he makes. Orpheus is surprised to clarify with him that it turns out, maybe even so. The cross says that in addition, the water sword can predict the movements of the enemy, like flowing water, and finish him off with just one blow. Livia says that reading your opponent's movements in advance is just amazing. Cross explains that it is usually necessary to study fencing for all 4 attributes. However, they do not have much time. So for now, they will focus on those styles in which they are well versed. Livia enthusiastically agrees, but Orpheus remains silent. The cross turns to Orpheus, waiting for his answer. He says he's not sure if he can do it, because he's always had a hard time with magic, so he's been fighting using only force so far. He assumes that he will not be able to meet their expectations. Orpheus cries and tells them that, nevertheless, he wants to stop the outrages of his older brother and avenge his father and friends whom he mercilessly killed. He claims that there is nothing wrong with his desire. He, being in terrible despair, turns to the cross. He asks the young man to teach him fencing. The cross reassures Orpheus, assuring him that he has no reason to worry at all. He comforts his friend by claiming that he is sure that Orpheus will become the greatest of all werewolves. At the same time, in the upper realm, in the estate of the Haverst ducal family, an incredibly loud scream is heard, which can be heard even outside their house. The father of the cross, the current head of the house of Haverst, screams in horror, clarifying that it turns out that his second son, Alibrit, was kidnapped by goblin women from the lower kingdom during the search for the cross. The secretary tells the head of the Haverst house that according to the story of the knight who managed to escape, Alibrit was stripped of all his clothes. His legs were smashed with stones, and then he was dragged into the depths of the forest. Alibrit's father screams, not believing that this has happened to his son. The head of the Haverst family suddenly starts foaming at the mouth, and his eyes roll up, as if he is about to faint. One of his sons, frightened by his father's condition, turns to him. One of the sons of the head of the Haverst house shouts at him, urging him to calm down and come to his senses. A little bit away from them, someone is watching all this situation. Leon Haverst, the 4th son of the House of Haverst, claims that Alibrit told him that he had some kind of secret plan, and now this is what he led him to. He believes that along with the cross, he has become a disgrace to the entire house of Haverst. He walks down the corridor and says that he heard that he went to the lower world in search of the cross only with his knights. He thinks it must have looked pretty funny to see a bunch of low-level amateurs jumping with guns to the advantage. The 4th son of the Haverst family bursts into someone's room and with a malicious smile asks those present there if he is not right about all this. He turns to Marness, a girl with glasses who is one of the maids of their house. She stands in the middle of the room he entered and tells him that he is absolutely right. The girl smiles, but suddenly Leon slaps her so hard that her glasses fly off her face. A red mark appears on Marna's cheek from his blow. The girl is silent, patiently bearing this attitude towards herself. Leon, displeased, asks Marnis how much longer she intends to remain in her human form. She hastily apologizes to him, calling him Master Leon. Instead of an ordinary girl with glasses, a fox appears in front of him, who looks very much like a human, but has fox ears, a fluffy tail, and very long hair that almost reaches the floor. Leon declares that she is a fox. He reminds her that he asked her not to take human form when she is alone with him. He tells the girl that if she tries to do it again, he will immediately kill her. Marnis apologizes to him. Leon decides to drop the subject. He asks her if his stones are ready. The fox girl immediately takes out a small box with a lot of stones and says that she has them all. She carefully holds the box with both hands and shows him all the stones. She begins to explain to him that they will temporarily enhance the magic in his body. She assures him that these are very powerful magic stones. Leon takes one of the stones in his hands, examining it from all sides. Marnis tells him that these magic stones also have the effect of neutralizing harmful elements from the lower realms. Leon, still holding the magic stone in his hands, looks at the girl with an incredulous look. She declares that she is confident that these magical stones will be able to meet all his expectations. Leon Haverst stops their conversation about magic stones and asks his maid how much she remembers about the Haverst cross. Lisa believes that Cross Haverst is the younger brother of Master Leon. She says that with all due respect to him, she doesn't know anything else about him other than that. Leon reflects that even a fox with magical knowledge cannot resist the servant's collar. He thinks that she used to be a maid of the cross, so he was afraid that she would do something, but the fears were in vain. Leon announces that tomorrow he will go to the lower world and bring the cross back home. He tells her to make sure that everything is ready for this. The girl replies that she understood his order. Marnis, with a smile on her face, tells Leon that when he returns from the underworld, she hopes that he will become the next head of the ducal family of the House of Haverst. Leon shouts at her to cover her mouth. He tells her that he doesn't need her anymore, so let her disappear from his sight. The fox hurriedly heads out of the room to leave him alone and apologizes to him on the way. Leon stands alone in the middle of the room, panting with mounting anger. He swears, and with a crazy smile on his lips, says that becoming the next head of the House of Haverst is just a result. Leon Haverst recalls the situation with the cross and declares that he will be waiting for him. He promises that he will repay him 1,000-fold for the humiliation he suffered at that very moment, through his fault. Chapter 13:1. At the Academy for Aristocrats, where Crest and his brothers study, students walk down the corridor and discuss among themselves one extremely interesting event that will take place within the walls of their academy. The face of the cross expresses some fright, and he stands with his sword when the presenter announces that Master Lion of the House of Haverst is going to have a mock battle with his younger brother Cross Haverst. He says that if the brother of the cross is the most powerful man in all of chivalry, then he must be even stronger than him. Leon stands waiting for their battle, because he is sure of his victory. The presenter suggests starting their duel. All the students of the academy who came to watch the battle on the swords of Lion and the cross are amazed by what they saw. The cross stands over his older brother after defeating him in their duel. The crowd begins to discuss the reason for Lion's loss in this battle. Someone suggests that he was just in bad shape, and someone says that he is simply not good enough. Meanwhile, in the villages of goblins and wolves, the cross claps to attract their attention and announces to the working villagers that there is enough work for today. The werewolf guy notices that he is sweating more than usual today, and his friend tells him that he is not the only one. The cross approaches the king of the werewolves, Orpheus. He turns to Orpheus and tells him that his fire sword style is becoming more accurate. He asks him if he thinks the same. Orpheus does not agree with the words of the cross that his style of the fiery sword has become more accurate and answers him that it has not yet. Orpheus holds his iced drink in his hands and explains to the cross that if there is even the slightest crack of the catastrophic energy that his older brother was releasing, then he will be absorbed by it in one fell swoop. Crest says it's a little late to ask him about it, but he still asks Orpheus what the ultimate goal of his brother, Verda, is. He assumes that the leader of the fighting wolves of the north wants to conquer their entire region. Orpheus tells him that perhaps his ultimate goal is to fight back against the subhumans in the north. He says that the further north you go, the more different demons and subhumans live there. He adds that the ways his brother is guided to follow him are threats of violence and fear. Orpheus agrees that some werewolves betrayed him, but he is sure that most of them are simply afraid of his older brother and follow him only because they have no other choice. The cross replies that it sees it. With regret in his voice, The cross declares that he would definitely help them if it were possible for him. Orpheus, after listening to the cross, feels some surprise. The cross notices Orpheus' strange reaction to his words and asks him what happened. Orpheus answers him that he thought he was not like that, and the cross clarifies whether he really thought so. The werewolf king looks up at the clear, blue sky and thinks deeply about something. Orpheus, continuing to watch the clouds in the sky, suddenly tells the cross that in his youth, his older brother was very kind and strong. The eyes of the cross widen in surprise at such a revelation by Orpheus about his brother. The cross asks Orpheus if what he has just told him is true. Orpheus sits down on a nearby stump and tells him that he was a pretty good older brother to him. The cross thinks it's just amazing. The cross listens attentively to Orpheus' revelations that he does not know exactly when his older brother went mad. The werewolf king assumes that it all happened too fast and many times. The cross suggests that if they figure out the reason for this, they can stop this whole fight. Orpheus, after listening to the proposal of the cross, thinks about it. He whispers that maybe they can even start living again. The cross, not having heard him, asks again. Orpheus tells him that he didn't say anything important and tells him to forget about it. The king of the werewolves claims that now they must gain strength for the upcoming events. The cross turns to Orpheus, intending to say something to him, but feels someone's presence behind him. Goblin grabs his hair tightly and starts pulling it in different directions. The cross begins to scream that it is very painful for him. Goblin sits on his neck, grabbing his hair, and Rufuna winds circles around him. The cross asks them what they are doing and shouts at the goblin to stop pulling his hair. The werewolf king assumes that Rufus and Goblin want him to play with them. The cross holds a disgruntled goblin, which he managed to remove from himself. His hair was still sticking out in all directions. He asks her if it's true. Goblin responds to him with undisguised indignation in his expression and tone. Crest says that he has been training so much lately that he has not been able to pay attention to them at all. He apologizes to them for this and promises that he will fix everything. Orpheus watches the whole situation of the cross and his friends with a smile. Orpheus tells the cross that he will go then. The cross is held in Goblin's arms and agrees with him. He looks after Orpheus walking away from him, thinking about something. Crest reflects that he does not know if Orpheus and his brother will have a second chance and whether they will be able to fix all this. He thinks that he would definitely prefer it to be possible, however, and considers the possibility that they will not be able to. He realizes that if they cannot reason with his brother, who is the current leader of the werewolf tribe from the north, then Orpheus will have to stop him at all costs. At the Academy for Aristocrats, in the dean's office, a student asks why he is the only one who failed the knighthood exam. The principal replies to the cross that he has heard that he bribed the students to lose to him in their duel. The cross asks him what he is talking about. He confidently declares that he did not do anything of the kind. The director says he regrets this, but he will be punished accordingly. The cross asks the director of the academy to listen to him. Someone punches Cross hard in the face with his fist. His older brothers kick him. He is lying on the floor, covering his head with his hands from their kicks. They say he's a disgrace to the House of Haverst. They ask if that's how he paid them for everything they did for him. The cross replies that he didn't do anything. The cross looks up and notices Leon standing around the corner, who is watching this with a malicious smile. The cross wonders if the brothers, will be able to start all over again. He believes that this is impossible, because the brothers hate each other. Someone is calling for the cross, but he, deep in thought, does not immediately respond to the call. Chapter 13:2. Cross suddenly wakes up with an obvious fright on his face from his dream where his brothers beat him. Someone is calling his name anxiously. The cross sees the girl's face right in front of him and asks if it is Livia. Livia, worried about him, asks if he is okay. She tells him that he doesn't look well. The cross slowly assumes a sitting position and responds to Livia that everything is fine with him. He tells her that he just had an extremely strange dream. Livia replies that she understood. The cross regretfully realizes that it still sees them. He decides that he will need some time to recover. Livia tells him that something happened in their village. The werewolf carries his badly wounded comrade on top of him, telling him to hold on. He shouts for someone to bring him a potion. The werewolves surrounded them, feeling anxious for their comrades. The cross runs up to them and shouts, asking them what it was. The werewolves reply that there used to be 3 werewolves from the north in their village. They say they are very sorry, because they screwed up, and they found them. Werewolves scream that they will never forgive them. One of the werewolves asks them how they managed to get back from there alive. He continues to hold on to his wound with his hand and tells him that it's all thanks to their daily training. The cross thanks the werewolves for their report. He turns towards Livia and Orpheus and asks them to leave with him for a few words. Orpheus, Livia and Crest move away from the rest of the villagers, and Orpheus, with surprise in his voice, asks Cresta if they really missed on purpose. The cross replies that they followed them to calculate their base. He turns towards the forest, where the wolves from the north are supposed to be now, and uses his skill called feelings. He feels the energy of 3 battle wolves from the north in the forest. He says it's definitely them. The cross offers Orpheus and Livia to intercept them on their way to the camp. Orpheus and Livia immediately agree with him. 3 war wolves from the north are heading to the village to the goblins and werewolves. Suddenly, a huge wall grows out of the ground, which prevents them from passing further. They swear, saying that a wall of earth appeared so suddenly right in front of them. Orpheus finds himself behind them and addresses the 3 war wolves. He says they haven't seen each other for a long time. The wolf with glasses recognizes a familiar voice. The werewolves turn around, and Orpheus sarcastically apologizes to them and tells them that there is no way they can let them go. The werewolf with glasses starts laughing. He clarifies that isn't it the younger brother of their king, Orpheus, who is in front of him now. He asks him how he likes the chair of the leader of avid incompetence. Orpheus looks at the wolf with undisguised malice in his eyes. The cross announces that he is the head of the organization in which Orpheus currently works. He tells the wolf that if he has something to say, then let him say it to him. The werewolves laugh maliciously, saying they are surprised. They claim that the incompetent was turned into a pet dog. Crest and Livia begin to get angry at the words of the werewolves, but Orpheus tells them to listen to him. The cross turns towards Orpheus, asking what he wanted to say. Orpheus tells the cross that a terrifying aura emanates from these 3 war wolves. He senses their aura and informs his companions that they have exactly the same aura as his older brother. Orpheus says that he has a very bad feeling and asks Livia and the cross to be more vigilant. The cross, after listening to the request of the werewolf king, replies to him that he will remain alert. The war wolves say they don't need to run away from a werewolf like him. They confidently declare that they will cut off his head right here and now and bring it to their true king. The werewolf with glasses suggests to his friend that he just use this thing. He pulls a stone out of his pocket and replies that he completely agrees with him. Orpheus is amazed, saying that this cannot be. The cross turns towards Orpheus, not understanding why he has such an acute reaction. The werewolves eat their stones, and Orpheus screams, asking if it was a magic stone. The werewolf, having absorbed the magic stone, says that now he can become as powerful a werewolf, just like from the king. He begins his transformation, which brings him terrible pain. The ground breaks under him, and he himself roars loudly from his transformation. Livia and the cross look at this with their mouths agape in surprise. The battle wolves from the server are getting bigger and stronger, and the cross asks what is going on at all. 3 werewolves who previously had a more human appearance turn into real wolves. Instead of a head, they have the muzzle of a wolf, and claws have grown on their hands, but the body resembles a human one. The cross, seeing what they have become, swears. He asks what it is all about. One of their war wolves starts attacking them. The cross screams, informing its comrades that it is approaching them. Livia attacks the wolf with her sword of the wolf attacking her. She inflicts a deep wound to his torso. Her eyes widen in surprise. She sees that his wound, which she literally inflicted on him, heals instantly. Livia shouts to the cross that they are extraordinarily strengthened thanks to the magic stones they ate. The cross holds one wolf with a sword, which tries to bite off his head. He shouts to her that he understood everything and tells them not to fall victim to their pace. He shouts at Livia to remember her usual training sessions. Livia resolutely replies that it will do so. Chapter 13:3. The huge werewolf growls loudly and swings his paw at Livia, who is half his size. The girl closes her eyes and begins to concentrate. She uses her water blade skill and uses it to attack the monster. She thrusts her sword through the battle wolf from the north right into his chest. With the tip of her sword, she touches the magic stone that he absorbed to become stronger and completely breaks it into small splinters. Having touched this stone, Livia kills her opponent. The stone explodes right into the wolf's torso. She shouts at the cross and Orpheus, telling them to aim their attacks at the magic stones that are inside their body. She claims that if they destroy the magic stones, they will get out of control. The cross shouts to her that he understood, and they will do exactly as she told them, and Orpheus also agrees. They are fighting the remaining werewolves. The trace of the exploded stone remains on the body of the wolves. 3 dead werewolves are lying on the ground next to each other. Orpheus, Livia, and the cross say that they managed to destroy them all. The cross says that if they do not return, they will notice from the base that something is wrong. He suggests that they may come to them to explore the area in the near future. Orpheus is deep in thought about something, so he does not immediately respond to the words of the cross. The young man, noticing that something is wrong with Orpheus, turns to him and asks him if he is okay. Orpheus answers him with regret in his voice that these guys don't know what mercy is at all. Orpheus says that actually, one day an outsider approached him about a deal with a magic stone. The Cross is shocked that Orpheus has encountered magic stones before. Orpheus recalls the situation when a man approached him, hiding his face with a hood on his head, and offered him to buy a magic stone. He tells the Cross that he did not recognize the seller's face then, but he called himself a vampire. Livia explains to them that vampires and foxes have magic. She says that they can also make various magical tools. Orpheus says that his father was a man of chivalry and hated magic tools, which is why they rejected this vampire salesman. He says he had no idea that he was selling magic stones to his brother behind his back. He looks at the wolves they killed and says that now they are no longer human, but have become demons. He says it's crazy to let the younger generation wear such a thing. The Cross begins its speech in front of the village. He announces to the villagers that they have killed the werewolves from the north nearby. However, they can expand their search area, so he asks them all to be alert and continue their diligent training. The Cross reflects that it is better to keep silent about the magic stone for now, because if they scare them away, it will lead to the opposite effect. The Cross realizes that with their current strength, the worst that can happen is that they will be wiped off the face of the earth. The Cross announces to Orpheus that he is heading to the village of Slime. Orpheus, who clearly did not expect this, is surprised by this decision of the Cross. Orpheus asks Cross if he is still going there on the subject of their alliance. The Cross replies that this is one thing, but first they need to share with them their information about the magic stones possessed by the werewolves from the north. He reminds Orpheus that Sufi told them that they are weak against magic, so magic stones and other magical tools can pose a strong threat to the slime's life. Orpheus says that the Cross is right, and they should tell the slime tribe in advance about the magic stones used by the werewolf tribe from the north, and maybe they will even change their point of view about forming an alliance with them. Orpheus asks the Cross if he can go with him to the village of Slime. The Cross replies that it cannot. He says that actually, he has a meeting scheduled for today. Rufuna suddenly starts barking somewhere nearby. Crest says that lately he has been so busy training and other things that Goblina sulked at him. He says that today they had to explore the forest for the first time in a long time. Orpheus remembers that he had already mentioned this earlier. He turns to Rufus and says that this is not exactly what they originally planned. However, they should hit the road right now. He asks his wolf Rufus where the goblin is. Rufus barks back at him. The Cross asks Rufuna if the goblin is still in a bad mood. He says they don't have much time, and he has no choice but to use his demon summoning skill here. Rufuna waves her head in different directions, telling her not to do this. The Cross clarifies with Rufus what happens. He does not need to do it. Rufus responds with his bark, and Cross asks him if he suggested he follow the scent and find her. Orpheus, who has been listening to the conversation all this time, realizes that he understands it. Crest admits that he is worried about the movement of werewolves from the north. He reports that he told Goblin to report to him as soon as she detects any danger nearby. The Cross agrees with Rufus' offer and tells him that it will go with him. He puts a bottle of potion and a small cape around his neck. The Cross tells him that it will give him potions just in case something happens. He asks Rufus to take him to the Goblin. The wolf enthusiastically agrees, and they set off. Leaving the village, a lot of petals from beautiful flowers are floating in the air in the forest. A goblin is sitting in the middle of a field of beautiful flowers, doing something. She is weaving a wreath of the flowers that now surround her. She looks at the wreath she has made and dreams of giving it to the Cross, and he will pat her on the head as gratitude and praise. Suddenly, a hand appears behind the goblins. Lion Haverst, the elder brother of the Cross, grabs the goblin by the back of her head from behind and roughly lifts her into the air. The goblin tries to turn around to see who is doing it. He furiously asks her if she is the goblin woman who beat up his brother Alibert. Chapter 14:1. The Cross asks Rufus if her scent has disappeared on the way he and Rufus tried to find her in the forest. The Cross asks him if he really doesn't smell anything at all, and the wolf confirms this with his barking. The Cross thinks about it and decides that it's all quite strange, because Rufus's sense of smell should be quite well developed. He looks closely at Rufus, seeing his obvious chagrin about this, and cannot understand how Rufus's nose cannot work, because she also has the name of a demon. Rufus lets go of his ears and barks plaintively, saying something to him, and the Cross, worried, replies that he is absolutely fine. He tells him that it just so happened today that his nose doesn't work. Cross suggests to his wolf, Rufus, that they just go to the place where he last smelled goblins, and the wolf agrees to his proposal. Lion, the elder brother of the Cross, continues to hold the goblin tightly by her head, squeezing it hard. Goblina screams from the pain he brings her. Behind him are two of his knights, as well as two magicians, whom he took with him to the lower world in search of his brother. Lion says it's extremely surprising to him that they haven't been seen at all yet. Goblina tries to get out of Lion's grip and screams furiously from the pain he brings her, squeezing the back of her head with his hand. Special smoke comes out of the small cups in the hands of the magicians, and Lion explains that absolutely their entire territory has already been blocked, thanks to this smoke from the guides of the lower kingdom. Lion tells Goblin that if she doesn't want her skull crushed by his hand, then she'd better tell him if she recognized any of the faces outlined in the portrait, and shows her the portrait frame. Goblina looks at the portrait of the family of the House of Haverst, on which the face of the cross is circled. Lion tells her that it looks like she has quite a lot of status for a goblin. He asks if she can at least tell him if she knows any of these people. Goblina's eyes widen when she notices Alibret, the second son of the House of Haverst, the elder brother of the Cross, whom she already knows after his battle with the Cross, when he tried to bring him back to the upper world. She, trying to get out of Lion's grip, pulls her arms back and grabs his hand with both hands, which he holds her head with. Lion asks her what she is doing, and Goblin squeezes his hand tightly, not going to let go. Lion tells her that it's useless, and now she won't be able to do him absolutely any harm, not even by a hair's breadth. He tightens his grip on the back of her head, digging his nails into it until blood appears, and the Goblin lets go of his hand, screaming in pain. He tells her to answer all his questions immediately. He asks her if she wants to lose her head. Goblin gets sick. Tears flow from her eyes, and she is on the verge of throwing up. She desperately continues to try to free herself from his hand, which holds her. However, Lion holds her very tightly and does not let her do it. Lion roughly throws her to the ground, cursing. The knight approaches Lion and asks him if he is okay. The young man replies that he is fine. He assures him that she wouldn't have been able to do anything to him anyway. He watches the crouching goblins and wants to say that this is why they are demons, but does not have time to finish. He notices that she suddenly takes out a flask with some liquid inside and drinks it completely. The knights exclaim that it is a potion, clearly concerned that she drank it. They don't understand where she could have hidden it from them in the first place. She wants to attack the goblin, who has surprised such a lion from her. She is already moving towards him when the knight punches her hard in the stomach. The knight says he won't let her touch Master Lion. The goblin falls to the ground at Lion's feet, crouching in pain. Lion says a goblin with a potion is a sight to behold. He orders two of his knights to find out from her where the cross is. The knights approach her and inform her that they are knights of torture, who have made all creatures in the upper world obedient and submissive. They say they think they can find out from her where the cross is. The goblin looks at them with fear in his eyes. Cross and Rufus continue to search for the goblin in the forest. He shouts loudly, calling her by name, asking where she is. But no one answers him. The Cross thinks about what is going on at all. He realizes that it's not just about Rufus's sense of smell. He can't believe that he too can no longer use his skills like detection technique or summoning. He remembers that his search did not work, as in the case of the battle wolves from the north, whom they defeated this morning. The Cross is aware that the situation is constantly changing. He decides that he should have been more vigilant. He nervously scratches the back of his head, starting to worry, and asks himself what he should do now. Cross's eyes widen in surprise as Rufus approaches him. The wolf comes close to him and hugs him with his tail. The Cross, which did not expect such a thing, just stands there, not moving. He tells his wolf that he calmed down thanks to him. He believes that it is at such moments that he needs to remain calm. Rufus barks back at him. The Cross looks into his wolf's eyes and tells him that he sees light in his eyes. Chapter 14:2. Suddenly, Rufus begins to illuminate the entire space around him with an incredibly bright light. The Cross is surprised to notice this strange phenomenon and turns to Rufus. He asks him what kind of light is coming from him, but Rufus himself does not know this either. He uses one of his skills called Assessment on it, which allows him to see the status of the demon attached to him, and, seeing something on the screen in his status, his eyes widen in surprise. The blooming field where Goblina was picking flowers to weave a beautiful wreath, which she intended to present to the Cross, turned into a creepy picture. The beautiful flowers turned red with drops of her own blood. The goblin, covered with deep, fatal wounds inflicted on her by the Knights of Lion, trying to extract from her any information about the Cross, lies in a pool of her own blood, absolutely motionless. Lion asks his two knights, who were responsible for getting all the information about the location of the Cross out of her, if they are stuck. The knight apologizes to Master Leon and says that she is much more stubborn than they initially thought. Lion orders his knights to go into the forest in search of his younger brother, the Cross, while he waits for him at this place. The knights reply that they understood his order, Suddenly, an empty bottle of potion flies somewhere. An empty bottle from a potion that Goblina recently drank flies straight into Lion's back. He turns around to look with his crazy eyes at what happened and who threw this bottle at him. A goblin rises to his feet in front of him, covered in blood from his wounds. She looks straight at him with her intimidating and determined gaze. Lion, angry at her, attacks her with his magic attacks to kill her to the end. He makes several holes in her body with his attacks, and she falls to the ground. He shouts with rage in his voice that this is enough. The goblin lies dying in a field of flowers while the elder brother of the cross exclaims, listing all these goblins and knights he brought here, and this maid Fox, and the Haverst and Cross family. He shouts angrily, why can't they all do what he wants them to do? He wants them all, whom he listed earlier, to stop annoying him so much. Lion tells his knight that the next time they try to deceive him or they fail to meet all his expectations, he will kill this fox and all their families. The knights apologize to him in fear. The petals of the flowers begin to rise into the air. Suddenly, the air lifts the goblin along with the flower petals into the air. She is floating in the air, and flower petals are flying around her in a circle. Lion and 2 of his knights are watching her closely, not understanding what is happening to her. All her wounds on her body, which she received from Lion and his knights, begin to heal instantly on her. Everyone who watches this is shocked. The knight exclaims that she is a goblin with incredible healing abilities. Lion says that they are absolutely wrong, and this is actually her skill. Lion looks at the petals from the flowers that surround her and assumes that she gets a lot of vitality from the environment. He thinks that the knights think that this goblin has a skill called herbalist, but this is not the case. He thinks that unlike humans and subhumans, demons should only have skills unique to them. He realizes that if this is the case, it means that she has a very rare skill. The magicians shockingly declare that this is impossible and ask how she could break through this smoke and use her skill. Suddenly, someone cuts the body of the magician who was creating the smoke into 2 parts. The magician looks at his comrade, not fully realizing what happened to him, because the attack was so fast that it was impossible to notice it. He looks at the remains of his comrade's body, trying to come to his senses. He calls his comrade, but before he knows it, he is also killed, chopped into several pieces. Lion and the knights are shocked by such a sudden and unnoticeable killing of their magicians. Rufus comes out to them. Rufus changed his appearance due to the transformation that took place with him in the forest. The knights notice the wolf and wonder if he chopped up those 2 magicians. They don't understand how the demon could get into this smoke. Lion is watching the situation and is very unhappy with it. He thinks that this can't be happening. The goblin that is still floating in the air begins to glow brightly. The knights look up at her to see what's going on. The knights exclaim in surprise, what is this sudden glow coming from her? The cross uses the skill Demon Evolution Technique, and the goblin begins to transform. Chapter 14:3. The goblin begins to evolve. All her injuries that she received earlier in the battle heal. Her hair becomes longer, her torso is stronger, and she herself has become much stronger. The knight laughs, hiding his excitement from her, and tells her that of course he did not understand what had just happened to her. However, he was just thinking that he had not tormented her enough. Suddenly, this knight gets hit in the face by goblins, a blow of such force that his teeth fly off. Goblin hits him with his foot so hard that his head comes off his body and flies back a couple of meters. His comrade, being in shock after such a sight, looks at the head of the slain knight, which landed right next to him, and does not understand what has just happened. He looks at the headless body of his comrade and asks how it happened in the first place. He says with regret that he just got married the other day. The knight, getting angry, starts shouting at her how she could do this to him. He laughs hysterically and assures her that now she won't be able to hurt him anymore. The goblin turns out to be near him, and the ground under her cracks from her physical strength. She hits him with her palm in the area of his stomach. Her precise, direct strike goes right through the knight's body. With her attack, she instantly kills another knight of Lion. Lion, who watched as Goblina single-handedly defeated his knights, realizes that she allowed her blow to penetrate inside his body and it ruined his armor. Goblina stands after she killed the 2 knights of Lion who tormented her. Suddenly, someone calls her name. She turns around when she hears a familiar voice and notices the cross. He immediately runs into his arms. She hugs him joyfully and says something to him. Cross hugs her back and says he's glad she's okay. The cross, continuing to hug the goblin, realizes that the plants surrounding them were medicinal herbs. He is glad that he can appreciate them. Cross notices the smoke that has robbed Rufus of his sense of smell. He recalls that he was able to break through this smoke thanks to Wolf's unique olfactory skills, which he gained as a result of his evolution, but then the reason why his summoning and detection technique did not work was different. Leon comes up to the Cross from behind and tells him that they haven't seen each other for a long time. The Cross, hearing a familiar voice, turns around to look at this man. The Cross, turning back, notices in front of him the fourth son of the Haverst family, his older brother Leon. The Cross turns to his older brother, who looks at him with a crazy look. The Cross is asking him if he came to him in the lower world to bring him home, as their brother Alibert had already tried to do earlier. Leon remembers his father's words about Alibert and claims that his father said that he was sniffing around with goblins. The Cross tells him that if he is so knowledgeable about everything, he knows that he is not going to return home to the upper world. He confesses to Leon that he thought of letting him go so that he could go back home safe and sound. Goblina notices Cross clenching his fist in anger and says that. However, now he wants to tell him something. The Cross menacingly warns his brother that since he and his knights have suffered a lot over the goblin, let him not think that now he will be able to return home to the upper world unharmed. Leon, after listening to the speech of the Cross, begins to laugh loudly and hysterically. He stretches out his shirt and shows the Cross a magic stone that is located right in his body, just below his chest. The Cross immediately recognizes this thing that has grown into his brother's body. He is surprised and feels excited. Leon says that he understands the brotherly spirit. He admits that he has not the slightest desire to do anything for these people from the upper world. Leon, with a crazy look and a smile, confidently declares that he came to him in the lower world to kill him. Chapter 15:1. Leon stands in front of a cross and goblins in a flower field in the forest. The Cross thinks that he knew it was a magic stone. He looks at his brother and realizes that it was he who sabotaged all his skills that he wanted to use earlier. The Cross calmly asks his brother where he was able to get the magic stone at all. He tells him that he thought magic stones were very hard to find in the upper world. Leon replies to the Cross that his old maid Marunas created his magic stones. The Cross, hearing his brother's answer, is amazed. The Cross remembers Marunas, a subhuman fox who was his maid when he was still living at the Haverst Manor. He reflects that he always thought that she kept her true identity as a fox a secret from all people except him. Leon, noticing the strange reaction of the Cross to his words, sarcastically asks him what happened to him. He asks the Cross if he is shocked by the fact that he took his own maid away from him, but the Cross does not react to his words in any way. Cross comes to his senses and decides that now is not the time to sort out his relationship with Marunas, his former employee. Cross decides to see what he can find out. He says that foxes can make magical artifacts, but the magic stone has some side effects. Leon laughs, asking if he still resents the fact that his maid was taken away from him. Leon complacently claims that the Cross was the only one in the upper world who is so incompetent that he trusts subhumans. He tells him that they first gave her to sinners and servants, and then got rid of her. The Cross decides that he had to resort to some cunning. Leon adds to his words that, although it was extremely unpleasant for him to swallow something that was left after her, Leon goes on the attack on the Cross, exclaiming that all this is only thanks to him. Leon uses a magical attack to attack the Cross. The young man does not have time to dodge, and the attack hits him. He flies back, but this attack does not cause him any serious injuries, and he lands on his feet. Leon tells his younger brother to look at it, because all this luxury and power, it's all for the sake of just getting back at him. The elder brother of the Cross approaches him and shouts at him that the humiliation he once experienced in the upper world because of him will be nothing compared to his humiliation. He attacks Cross with his hand. However, he blocks his blow with his sword. Leon intends to attack him one more time, shouting at him to get them. Leon continues to attack him, striking him multiple times and using only hand-to-hand combat. Cross fights off his blows with his sword. The Cross deliberately falls to the ground, pushes off with his hands and hits his older brother with two legs at once. But he manages to put a block. The Cross attacks Leon from the air, accompanying the attack with its loud cry. Leon manages to notice his attack. He puts his hand up to protect himself from a sword attack. The sword didn't leave a scratch on his bare arm. The Cross, seeing this, realizes that it has strengthened, taking advantage of the confusion of the Cross. Leon attacks him, and the Cross flies back, The cross turns to his older brother Leon and tells him that he does not know the true essence of the magic stones he uses. Leon doesn't understand what the cross is telling him. The cross claims that skills are a power given to them by Almighty God, and the demon stone is nothing more than a miracle created by humans and subhumans. Leon laughs, saying that he lectures him as soon as he realizes that he cannot win it. He demands to prove his divine power to him. The cross looks at the distraught brother and answers him that if he insists on it, then he will do it. Chapter 15:2. Cross punches his fist into the face of his older brother Leon. The impact of the cross was so strong that steam is coming from his hand. The cross strikes Leon many precise blows at once, aiming at his face and torso. Leon continues to stand on his own 2 feet, but he does it with great difficulty. Cross explains that he used his skill, which increases his physical performance, and it is the most common among all his skills. Leon laughs maliciously as his wounds from the blows of the cross heal on him. He suggests to his younger brother to try something stronger against him. Leon is fully recovering from his punches. He hysterically screams at him that his skill doesn't work against him at all. Leon asks his youngest if this is his power of God. He declares that now it's his turn and crosses his arms. Leon uses a skill called Windbreaker to attack the cross with it. The airflows are directed towards the cross. Cross uses his oblique attack skill and uses his sword to deflect his attacks so that they hit their owner. The streams of air that Leon himself created cause him many cuts on his body, but do not touch his face, since he managed to cover it with his own hands. Leon is standing in front of the cross, who is clearly surprised by what is happening. The cross asks his older brother if he remembers. The cross asks Leon if he remembers the last time he challenged him to a duel. He asks Leon if he was talking about revenge that day. Leon, who did not expect such words from the cross, is surprised. Leon begins to shake with the anger he feels towards his younger brother and clarifies with him what is happening. The cross has not forgotten this. Leon starts yelling at Cross, saying he's probably joking. He asks the cross if he thinks that the whole range of his humiliations is related only to this day, when their duel took place at the academy. The cross stands silently, listening to his brother's screams and does not answer his questions in any way. Leon starts to go crazy. He grabs his head and shouts to the cross that he is always like this, that he always looked down on him and stole absolutely everything from him. Leon prepares his new magical attack to attack the cross and declares that he will never forgive him. He tells the cross that he is executing him right here and now. Leon uses his skill called Tornado to attack his younger brother. The tornado heads towards the cross, who reflects that he did not think that Leon could create such powerful wind magic. He realizes that, as he thought, the effect of this magic stone is simply terrifying. The cross realizes that with increasing mass and rotational speed, its thrust is low, so it decides that it will be easier for it to evade this attack. Suddenly, a knight appears behind him, intending to grab him. The knight holds the cross by the hands so that he cannot dodge or escape from the attack of the tornado that Leon created. He looks back and sees that the knight who grabbed him is just the body of a knight without a head. The cross, frightened, asks what it is. Leon, who also did not expect this, is surprised. He watches it and starts laughing, saying it's very good. He tells the headless knight to keep up the good work. Meanwhile, the tornado created by Leon is already very close to the cross. Suddenly, Rufus appears in front of him, who repels his brother's magical attack, and a goblin lands behind him. Leon, upon seeing them, begins to get angry, not understanding how they got there. Goblin pulls out the knight's heart, lifts it up and squeezes it so hard that it crushes it. The goblin frees the cross from the capture of the decapitated knight. The cross thanks Rufus and Goblin. He pats their heads and tells them that they both did a great job. The cross looks at the body of the headless knight, who remained standing in the same standing position, and realizes that the knights also had magic stones. The cross believes that only after the destruction of the insides did it stop moving. He decides that as long as the knight's heart is intact, the magic stone can control his body. Leon swears, and the cross comes up to him and asks him if he now understands what he was talking about. Chapter 15:3. The cross tells his brother Leon that the headless corpse of his knight helped him, but the magic stone that he swallowed is an extremely dangerous thing for him. Leon looks at the stone in his body and starts shaking from the pain his magic stone is causing him. The cross tells him to go back home to the upper world while he still has his mind. He claims that he can't help him in any way, but the fox maid can. Leon doesn't want to listen to him and shouts at the cross to shut his mouth. Leon, completely out of his mind, pulls out all the stones that he has and holds them in his palm. The cross is surprised that it has even more stones. Leon looks at the magic stones in his palm and says he can't lose to him anymore. He swallows all his magic stones at once. The cross, shocked by his brother's act, shouts at Leon to spit them out immediately. Leon starts laughing hysterically. He raises his gaze to the sky and spreads his arms to the sides, waiting for his strength and power to come to him. The cross begins to experience some kind of ominous and frightening feeling. Leon continues to crumple hysterically. He begins to transform. His face contorts, and he declares that he feels the magic power bubbling up in him from the magic stones. Leon's body cannot cope with such a flow of magical power, which was given to him by the stones he ate magically. His brain explodes and blood pours out of Leon's ears, eyes, mouth, and nose. He falls to the ground and lies in a pool of his own blood. The cross, shocked by such a sight, stands motionless. Then he carefully walks closer to his older brother and looks at his bloody corpse. The cross looks at the dead Leon, who lies with his own pool of blood and assumes that his body could no longer withstand those magic stones. Crest believes that at this speed he can get out of control very quickly. He decides that this is why they should quickly stop his heart. He looks at his older brother with regret. He tells Rufus and Goblin that hatred can bring a person to such a state. Cross uses his water sword style skill and, intending to pierce his older brother's heart with his sword, says goodbye to him forever. The stone is suddenly illuminated by light and, with the help of its magic, tears off the cross's left arm up to his shoulder. The cross lets go of its sword, not fully realizing what happened to it. The goblin, seeing that their master was mortally wounded, screams loudly, and Rufus howls plaintively. The cross flies back from Leon. The cross loses a lot of its blood due to a severed arm. At this time, his older brother gets up. He starts screaming loudly. Leon gets bigger. He gets huge wings, and he completely transforms into a scary, huge monster. He is incredibly large, his ears are sharp, and there are 2 horns on his forehead. The cross sees Goblin and Rufus in front of him, who are trying to shout at him. He barely leaves his eyes open, but realizes that he absolutely does not hear them. The cross understands that now, if this monster attacks him, he will not be able to use his skills. Chapter 16:1. The Havers brothers' mother says, holding little Leon on her lap, that after a while he will have a little brother or sister. She tells him that then he will become a good friend to them. Leon laughs happily and replies to his mother that he loves her very much. Little Leon closes his eyes against the rising wind. He finds himself in a void and starts looking around for his mother. He calls her and asks where she is, but gets only silence in response. Leon, who is turned into a terrifying monster, remembers about his mother and begins to cry bitterly. He begins to scream loudly at the whole forest from his mental pain. Leon is shouting at the whole forest. He goes in search of his missing younger brother and calls him, asking where he is hiding. A fresh trail of blood, which belongs to the wounded cross, leads to a small, dark cave nearby. There is an empty potion bottle on the ground. Bitter tears roll down the goblin's cheeks. Goblina watches as Rufus frantically licks the face of the dead cross. She looks at his arm, torn off to the shoulder, and asks something. The goblin cries and stretches out his hand to touch the face of the cross. He strokes his cheek, not believing that he is dead. In her eyes, filled with tears, a sudden determination flickers. She puts her hands on his chest and continues talking without stopping. Rufus watches this with a look full of pain. Goblin begins to realize that the cross is really dead. The goblin begins to shake with sobs. Then, she screams loudly, not believing that the cross is dead. Rufus, who was watching them, also begins to cry. Suddenly, near the severed arm of the cross, an inscription is displayed that the download of the emergency program has begun. Huge screens appear in front of the goblin, which are an emergency service notification, where it is written in detail how it will take place. The system notifies that a serious error has occurred in the physical body of the owner of the demonic technique skill. So emergency maintenance will begin in 5 seconds. Goblina and Rufus listen carefully to what the notification tells them. The screen also says that the content transmits a large amount of vital energy to the user, so they recommend running it only in conditions where they have enough vital energy. The system notifies that in addition, the accuracy of this maintenance will depend on the level of the demonic skill. And to receive the selection information, they are asked to check the log screen after completion of maintenance. The report is over. The system announces that emergency maintenance is starting. Something strange begins to happen. The floor begins to glow. Goblin and Rufus are wary of all this, and do not understand what is happening now. A ball appears in the middle between the shoulder of the cross and its severed arm, which glows very brightly. Suddenly, Rufus and Goblin are howling loudly. The download of repeated blood transfusion begins. which is already at 50% out of 100. His shoulder and arm are starting to recover. The face of the cross, deathly pale and lifeless, takes on a more animated appearance in an instant. The system notifies that emergency maintenance has been completed and thanks for the usage. Goblina and Rufus exhale with relief when it's all over. A hoarse cough echoes through the cave. Goblin looks at the cross, saying something to him. The cross continues to lie, but uses his skill called light magic. A floating ball appears above them, which radiates a bright light all around them. Rufus and Goblina look up at her. The cross clarifies that they did save him. He calls Goblin and Rufus and, with tears in his eyes, sincerely thanks them for his rescue. Rufus is happy to see a living cross, and Goblin begins to cry with happiness. Chapter 16:2. The cross hugs Goblina and Rufus tightly. They hug him back, saying something to him. The cross touches his body in the place where his arm was torn off and says that this is amazing, because there are no traces on his body. He claims that you can't even tell if someone attacked him. The cross remembers Leon and asks Rufus and Goblin what happened to him. He remembers that it seems he was going to kill him. Rufus and Goblina begin to answer him, telling him what happened. The cross, after listening to the answers of his friends, thinks. He tells them that his older brother is clearly cursed. He claims that the magic stone blocks the sensing technique. Suddenly, the cross begins to feel a headache. The cross turns out to be in some place where his older brother Leon is standing behind him near someone's grave. The cross opens its eyes wide in surprise and does not understand what happened to it. He turns around and sees Leon Haverst with a bouquet of flowers. Leon tells Mom that he's the one who came. The cross begins to realize that he has fallen into memories that belong to Leon. His older brother tells his dead mother that as soon as the cross disappeared, his brothers began attacking him. He watches Leon carefully place a beautiful bouquet of flowers on their mother's grave. He assumes that his older brother's memories are flowing directly into his brain due to the flash of the magic stone. The cross stands behind Leon and listens as he talks to their mother's grave. He tells her that as soon as the cross was born, she died. Leon claims that their whole family is cursed. Leon says that his brothers cannot get along with each other in any way, because as long as the cross is alive, their family will be haunted by misfortunes. The cross listens to Leon, feeling some kind of regret. Leon gets to his feet and asks their mother that she will look after them all in heaven. He turns towards the cross and confidently declares that he will avenge the humiliation she suffered from him and get even with him for her death. The cross returns from the memories of his older brother Leon back to reality. Leon's face expresses determination, while the face of the cross expresses nothing. He is completely indifferent. The cross says that the demonic stone blocks his abilities, but does not block Leon's abilities. He informs them that the memories of the other side of him have flooded his head, without any questions. The cross wonders if it's really a crime to be alive. Goblin is asking him something. The cross expresses its displeasure, saying that he has already heard all this. He claims that he is extremely tired of listening to it all the time. The cross turns to Goblin and Rufus and apologizes to them for that. He says they'll have to stay with his older brother a little longer. The cross, with all his determination, says that the three of them will stop him. Goblina and Rufus support him, enthusiastically saying something to him. Meanwhile, Leon finds a trail of Cross's blood, which leads him straight to the cave where Cross, Goblin, and Rufus should be hiding. Leon begins to destroy the cave by pounding on it with his huge fists. He asks the cross where he is. Suddenly Leon hears the cross saying that he is here. Leon turns around at his shout, but he doesn't see the cross anywhere. He starts screaming again, calling for him to come out. Not far from him, he notices Rufus, who resolutely looks straight at him. Leon screams, asking the cross where he is. The wolf continues to stare resolutely straight at him. Leon tries to grab Rufus. Rufus uses his skill called Howl, which creates a dome around him, preventing Leon from approaching him. Leon, touching the dome, freezes in place. The cross shouts to the goblin that it's time for her to act. She immediately runs out of her hiding place. The cross, advancing on Leon, reflects that Rufus' unique skill temporarily imprisons the target in a golden bridle. He shouts to Leon that it's over for him. The cross and the goblin attack him together with a loud shout. Chapter 16:3. The cross and the goblin hit him right into the magic stone in his body. They destroy the magic stone, and it falls away from Leon's body, crumbling to pieces. Leon's body explodes in the chest area where the magic stone used to be. The magic stone turns black and disappears right into the air. In the forest, Goblin, Cross, and Rufus watch as Leon's body begins to slowly evaporate. The Cross realizes that the reaction to the huge flow of magical power causes the sacralization of its body. He believes that even his skills can no longer stop this process. He turns to Leon. The cross says that he has already severed all his ties with the upper world, so he doesn't care what happens to him now. He admits that he just feels sorry for his mother. He says he really regrets it. The dying Leon is looking at the sky when he notices something in the distance that is flying straight towards him from the heavens themselves. It gets closer and closer to him, and Leon opens his eyes in surprise when he begins to realize who it is. His mom appears in front of him, with big angel wings, opening her arms for him. With the last of his strength, Leon calls his mother. The cross is surprised, asking if his mother has come for him. Leon, who has almost disappeared, starts laughing and says that it has finally come. His mom touches his face, and he tells her with a happy smile on his face that he met her before anyone else. He claims that from this very moment, she will be together forever. Cross, Goblina, and Rufus watch closely as Leon disappears completely. The Cross looks with sadness and regret at the disappearing Leon and their mother. The Cross turns to Rufus and Goblin, inviting them to go home. His friends are happy to agree. In the upper world, at the estate of the Habast family, one of the maids with a broom in her hands tells Merle, a former servant of the Cross, to take care of the window. She agrees and goes to the window with a bucket full of water to wash it. Merle puts her bucket on the floor, almost spilling the water, and wonders if Master Lion has already returned home from the underworld. She starts to wipe the window carefully when she hears two maids talking nearby. One of the maids says it's so terrible because the head of the Habast house is losing his children one by one. Suddenly, Merle is stripped of the servant collar that Leon put on her to subdue her and falls to the floor near her feet. Merle picks him up from the floor, examining him. He realizes what has happened to her, and her gaze expresses anger and determination. One of the maids, noticing Merle's strange behavior, asks her if something is wrong. She replies that everything is fine. She's lying that she just has fireproof garbage here. She informs that she will go and throw it away. The maid tells her to sort it out. Merle destroys the servant's collar and says that, as planned, Leon died in the underworld. She turns into her true self, the fox. She exclaims that now let Master Cross wait for her, because she will definitely come to him.